Chapter 812. Given the Diamond X/Fantasy V Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly's soul strength, even suzerain/mythi insect species phase might be able to be subdued. There were not only insect species phase, but alien insects were also considered a major type of insect species life forms. There were many high-grade alien insects with extremely domineering appearances. At the same time, as dimensional life forms, alien insects' soul strength was far lower than insect species phase of the same strength. It was easy for the Diamond X/Fantasy V Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly to control the alien insects, which were equivalent to suzerain/mythi phase. It was even possible to control Class 8 alien insects that were equivalent to suzerain/myth 2 phase. Lin Yuan was simply too greedy for the Class 8 Imperial Armored Martial God insect. The Imperial Armored Martial God insect looked very much like a transformer covered in insect armor. When it fought, the insect armor would skillfully combine into all kinds of weapons. The Imperial Armored Martial God insect relied on its sharp and hard insect armor to contend with most Myth 2 phase that had comprehended laws. Under normal circumstances, the alien insect dimensional life form's combat power was far lower than that of other dimensional life forms of the same grade. However, the Imperial Armored Martial God insect's combat power was abnormal among Class 8 dimensional life forms. It relied on its insect armor and amazing strength to fight evenly with the Scythehorn demons, which were outstanding Class 8 demons. It even seized the initiative and could suppress the Scythehorn demons. It was just like the Class 3 alien insect, the heart-penetrating iron line, to dimensional life forms of the same grade. If he could use the 12 Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterflies to control 12 Class 8 Imperial Armored Martial God insects, which were equivalent to suzerain/myth 2 phase, and then build the Fey carriage into a sharp metal style with sharp edges, it would definitely be very cool when paired with the strange combination of the Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly and the Imperial Armored Martial God insects. However, as cool as it was difficult for Lin Yuan to obtain the Imperial Armored Martial God insects. Class 8 Alien Insect Emperor Armored Martial Divine Insects would only appear in alien insect dimensional rifts of Class 4 and above. Compared to ordinary insects that lived in groups, the Emperor Armored Martial God insect was a lone ranger through and through. They spent their entire lives killing and fighting. Even if there were a large number of Class 8 alien insects in the insect tide, spewing out from a dimensional rift, they might not be able to find the Imperial Armored Martial Divine Insect among them. After all, the Imperial Armored Martial God insects were not the only species of 8 extreme alien insects that had spewed out of the dimensional rift. When people don't need anything, these things often come to them at will. When he really needed something, and went out of his way to find it, he often couldn't find it no matter how hard he searched. If he was really unlucky, even if he controlled a Class 4 alien insect dimensional rift and waited at the dimensional hub, he wouldn't be able to survive. If they waited for the alien insects to surge out of the dimensional hub, they might not even see a single Emperor Armored Martial God insect, even if they waited for a few months. Furthermore, given his current strength, he was not strong enough to explore the Class 4 alien insect dimensional rift. Although the Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterfly was a Diamond X/Fantasy V Fey, its strength lay in its ability to enslave other Feys with its soul. The interior of the alien insect dimensional rift could be said to be the Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterfly's paradise. Each Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterfly could control a powerful alien insect through soul enslavement. If they didn't want to control a single insect life form, they could easily use soul enslavement to control an entire sea of insects. However, the Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterfly could only change targets after the enslaved Fey died. Once the Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterfly's enslaved alien insects were careless, or if it encountered other powerful alien insects, it wouldn't be able to make its enslaved alien insects commit suicide in time. A fragile and precious Fey like the Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterfly was very likely to perish in the Class 4 dimensional rift. This was what Lin Yuan didn't want to see no matter what. Suddenly Lin Yuan had an idea. He recalled that Long Tu had said in his return from Faraway Manor that the Long family controlled several Class 4 dimensional rifts. While nurturing dragon species phased through these Class 4 dimensional rifts, they had also collected a massive amount of Law Origin crystals. The Law Origin crystals condensed in different high-level dimensional life forms were different. For example, the Law Origin crystals condensed in the bodies of high-level alien insects that were comparable to myth breed phase had the unique aura of the alien insects and were easy to distinguish. 1/3 of the 10,000 Law Origin crystals that Long Tao had brought him came from alien insects. This meant that the Class 4 dimensional rift controlled by the Long family would not have a small number of alien insects. High-grade alien insects were just for nurturing dragon species phase and didn't have much use for them. If he proposed to the Long family to trade for a living imperial armored martial god insect, the Long family would have no reason to refuse. With this thought, Lin Yuan felt that his idea of driving 12 imperial armored martial god insects to pull the Fey carriage was likely to come true. The reason why Lin Yuan was so greedy for the Class 8 imperial armored martial god insects was because he had seen an illustration on the wall of the Royal Capital's Fey Observer Guild's president, Lan Qin. On the wall of Lan Qin's observation room was an imperial armored martial god insect. The insect armor on its body flowed to its back, and finally formed 3 sets of complex insect armor. The 3 sets of insect armor spread out on the imperial armored martial god insect's back like 3 pairs of steel wings. In this form, the imperial armored martial god insect was like an invincible 6-winged steel-winged slaughter angel. Moreover, the imperial armored martial god insect's combat power could protect the Fey carriage to the greatest extent and increase the Fey carriage's safety. After all, the best defense was to immediately annihilate the enemy when it discovered them. Lin Yuan raised his head and smiled at his master, the Moon Empress, revealing his small white teeth. "Master, I like these 12 heaven fragrance beauty butterflies very much." The Moon Empress was in a great mood when she heard Lin Yuan's words. At that moment, she seemed to finally feel a trace of happiness as a master for the sake of her disciple. After giving Lin Yuan some instructions, the Moon Empress stood in the air with Cold Moon and Mystic Moon, and entered the Moonlight Pagoda, which was held up by the 2 giant green and white snakes. After watching Ling Hanyue's carriage go far away, Lin Yuan turned and headed for the Hidden Moon Pavilion. He was going to check the Hidden Moon Pavilion's 72nd floor to the 87th floor, which contained a total of 15 floors combat skills and movement techniques. The combat skills and movement techniques recorded in the Hidden Moon Pavilion were completely incomparable to those published on the Star Web. The Radiant Moon Palace's Hidden Moon Pavilion's combat skills and movement techniques were all legacies from before the Spirit Chi Awakening. With the Spirit Chi Awakening, many of the combat skills and movement techniques from before the Spirit Chi Awakening had disappeared in the torrent of time. Apart from the Hidden Moon Pavilion, there was probably no other place in the world that could collect such comprehensive combat skills and movement techniques. Lin Yuan arrived at the Hidden Moon Pavilion's 72nd floor, without any obstructions, and immediately summoned Genius. The second floor was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 813. Lin Yuan said to Genius, "Genius, let's use one day to record all the combat skills and movement techniques on the 15 floors of the Hidden Moon Pavilion." Genius said with a meow, as it looked at the hundreds of bookshelves on this floor that were filled with ancient books. Woo woo woo, Genius remembers things very quickly, but Genius isn't able to flip through these books quickly. Genius felt that it wouldn't be able to flip through 20 bookshelves in a day, even if it relied on its little paws to flip through the books nonstop. Lin Yuan rubbed Genius' little head and took out a Star Web card from a box placed on the 72nd floor of the Hidden Moon Pavilion's altar. The Hidden Moon Pavilion's information and ancient books might be placed on the bookshelves in the form of physical books, but the information was already backed up on the Star Web. When Genius saw Lin Yuan taking out the Star Web card, its eyes lit up and it spoke in a childish voice. If this is on the Star Web, even if Genius is 10 times more intelligent, it will only take half an hour to memorize, analyze, and organize the information. Thus, Lin Yuan and Genius started to take a Star Web card placed on the offering table on each floor of the Hidden Moon Pavilion. Genius then logged into the star web and quickly memorized the combat techniques and movement techniques in every level of the manuals. After Genius memorized all 15 floors, Lin Yuan consumed the muscle super memory herbs root like before. With Genius' exclusive skill, the interconnection tail, Lin Yuan's body cells entered the super memory state again. He memorized the 15 floors of the Hidden Moon Pavilion's collection of complex combat skills and movement techniques. Half an hour later, Lin Yuan recovered from the super memory state and reached out to clench his fist. Lin Yuan activated Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Essence Burst, and a ball of Spirit Chi Veil that looked like a flame was attached to Lin Yuan's fist. Lin Yuan realized that after learning these complex combat skills and movement techniques, his body's control over the minute details had reached the acme of perfection. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan's control over the Spirit Essence Burst had increased. After all, the circulation of Spirit Chi in the body had an extremely strong auxiliary effect. Lin Yuan was now considered to have completely and perfectly integrated with Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Essence Burst, allowing him to freely use it in battle. He had perfectly unleashed the maximum damage that his Spirit Essence Burst could deal. This was also one of Lin Yuan's trump cards to compete for the championship in the Nyx Assembly's civil and martial arena. Just as he was about to return to the mansion, Lu Jie, who had been staying in the land of spirit suppression, opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Night Leaning Moon standing beside him, protecting him. Lu Jie hurriedly said, "Master, my insect queen has already devoured and absorbed these 7 insect-type carcinoma phase. It has also used the insect queen's genes to create new insect-type carcinoma phase. I can now freely control these 7 insect species carcinoma phase." As he spoke, Lu Jie could not help but sigh. He was truly blessed after surviving a great disaster. The insect queen that Lin Yuan had rescued had fused with the Blade Queen Bee's mental toxin and had undergone a positive mutation. From this mental toxin, the insect queen bee had obtained an ability unique to the Blade Queen Bee, which was its control over blade worms. However, the blade worms that the insect queen bee controlled were not the same as the Blade Queen Bees. Blade worms were just a general concept. According to this mental toxin, the insect queen could control any insect-type carcinoma phase. It treated the insect-type carcinoma phase as blade worms and controlled them. Even the Blade Queen Bee, which had promoted the insect queen bee's mutation, immediately became an insect-type carcinoma phase under the insect queen bee's control after the mutation was completed. A carcinoma phase like the Blade Queen Bee could be considered a disaster on the battlefield. However, Lu Jie's insect queen now controlled a total of 8 types of destructive war weapons like the Blade Queen Bee. Night Leaning Moon nodded in response. Her face was covered by a black veil, and her expression could not be seen. However, from the corner of her eyes, it could be seen that Night Leaning Moon was rather impressed with Lu Jie's growth. As expected, you have realized the plan that I suggested to you previously. This time, the insect queen has controlled 7 insect-type carcinoma phase. In addition to the Blade Queen Bee, that the insect queen bee automatically controls after completing its mutation, you now have 8 insect-type carcinoma phase under your control. This is just the beginning. For the past 1,000 years, the spirit guards have taken in close to 1,000 types of insect-type carcinoma phase, especially during the time when the spirit chi is thin. When your insect queen's spiritual energy increases a little more, I will pick out some more insect-type carcinoma phase for you. In the future, you can let the insect queen control even more insect-type carcinoma phase. Each insect-type carcinoma phase is a unique weapon, and your insect queen will be the arsenal that contains these weapons. However, you must not use your sacred source life form. Treat your sacred source life form as your ultimate weapon. Hearing this, Lu Jie smiled and nodded in response. Don't worry, Master. I will do my best to fight for a spot in the Great Night Assembly's martial arena. Night Leaning Moon immediately said, Master, don't worry. This time, the Great Night Assembly is holding the civil arena, martial arena, and civil and martial arena, but it is not my intention. It is mainly because the other old guys want to see the strength of the top faction's younger generation. The Civil Arena's reward is a soon-to-be hatched island whale. Lu Jie's heart trembled when he heard about the Civil Arena's reward. He never expected the Civil Arena's reward to be a soon-to-be hatched island whale. Even a strategic resource like the island whale would be publicly displayed on the card as a reward. Just based on this reward alone, one could imagine how intense the fight for the Civil Arena's champion would be. The Martial Arena was on par with the Civil Arena, so the reward should not be too bad. As for the Civil and Martial Arena, which was even more valuable than the Civil and Martial Arenas, the All-Rounder Arena, Lu Jie did not have time to guess how generous the rewards would be. Night Leaning Moon continued. The Martial Arena's reward is a chance to forge a custom-made artifact. The sacred source life form used to forge the artifact will not be lower than 4-star, but it will not be higher than 6-star either. This opportunity was provided by Bamboo Monarch. As for the Civil and Martial Arena's reward, it will be a sacred source life form and a radiant metal. Lu Jie sucked in a breath of cold air and could not help but exclaim, "It's a radiant metal." The Martial Arena's artifact and the Cultural Relic Arena's sacred source life form both surprised Lu Jie. However, compared to the radiant metal, even the sacred source life form was nothing. The third round. End of this chapter. Chapter 8:14. In Lu Jie's opinion, the radiant light metal was more valuable than a sacred source life form, but not because it could increase one's strength like a sacred source life form. The radiant light metal was just a metal made of metal and spirit materials. It had no use on its own. But the radiant metal had an extraordinary symbolic meaning. This was because the radiant light metal was something related to the Radiance Envoy. Apart from being selected from the Radiance 100 sequence, the Radiance Envoy's other selection methods were to be selected from people with Radiance medals. Ever since the previous generation's 5 Radiance Envoys were gathered, the next generation's Radiance medal, which had the qualifications to participate in the Radiance Envoy selection, had already started to look for suitable people. The radiant light metal came from the Imperial Court. Every generation of Radiance Envoys would have 10 radiant light medals issued before the selection. In the past 5 years, 9 of the 10 radiant light medals that represented the selection of the next Radiance Envoys had been issued. The radiant light medal, which was the reward for the champion of both the civil and military arenas in the Great Night Meeting, was the last of the 10 radiant light emblems for this generation's Radiance Envoy selection. However, the champion of the Evernight Assembly's Civil and Martial Arena was equivalent to directly having the qualifications to select the next Radiance Envoy. However, this was not the only benefit of the Radiant Light Medal. Even if a person with the Radiant Light Medal did not become a Radiance Envoy in the end, he would still be a Radiance Envoy. They could also choose to join the Radiance Knights, which had a total of 10 members, and was created to protect the 5 current Radiance Envoys. As soon as Lu Jie knew that the Nyx Assembly had a civil and martial arena, he had subconsciously thought of Lin Yuan. As far as he knew, Lin Yuan was the most outstanding creation master and combat class spirit chi professional. But on second thought, Lu Jie felt that the Nyx Assembly was being held a little too early. If the Nyx Assembly could be held a year later, the Radiant Light Metal and Sacred Source Life Form might really be in Lin Yuan's pocket. This year, Lin Yuan had confirmed that he would participate in the Radiance 100 sequences selection. Given his strength, it would be easy for him to become a Radiance 100 sequence member. Before the Radiance Envoy selection, the top 10 of the Radiance 100 sequence would have the opportunity to select the current Radiance Envoy. At that time, no one in the Radiance 100 sequence would hide their strength, and there would definitely be an intense battle among the sequences. At that time, the entire Radiance 100 sequence rankings would be completely disrupted and reorganized. The selection of the past Radiance Envoys had all used the points-based assessment method without exception. In the end, the top 5 members with the highest points would be selected to become the current Radiance Envoys. If he didn't use the Radiant Light Medal, and instead obtained the opportunity to enter the Radiance Envoys test by competing for the top 10 spots in the Radiance 100 sequence, he wouldn't be able to enter the Radiance Envoy test. Then, the Radiant Light Medal would be converted into 100 points before the Radiance Envoy selection began, allowing the owner of the Radiant Light Medal to be one step ahead from the beginning. It would be a pity if he missed such an opportunity. Night Leaning Moon saw that Lu Jie had finished his seclusion and no longer needed her protection, so she prepared to leave the land of spirit suppression and head to her palace in the capital, Night Ending Palace. As the organizer of the Nyx Assembly, Night Leaning Moon could be said to be late. Although there were still a few days before the Nyx Assembly began, today was the day they had agreed to discuss important matters. At this time, the old man, Supreme Chef, who always appeared last, should have arrived at Yeong Palace. Just as Night Leaning Moon was about to turn around and leave, Lu Jie called out to her. Night Leaning Moon turned to look at Lu Jie and heard him say, "Teacher, I want to wear the Spirit Guard standard mask for this Nyx Assembly." Upon hearing that, Night Leaning Moon's eyes revealed a trace of astonishment. The Nyx Assembly was originally to publicize Lu Jie's identity and let others clearly know who her disciple was. If Lu Jie wore a mask at this time, then half of the meaning of the Nyx Assembly that she had specially organized would be lost. However, Night Leaning Moon could hear that Lu Jie's words were not a question or a request. When Lu Jie said this, he had probably already made up his mind. Night Leaning Moon asked Lu Jie with some confusion, "Why?" The Spirit Guard standard mask was a special mask made by the Spirit Guards members when they went on a mission, so that the enemy could not see their appearance clearly. Almost every part of his face that could be seen was firmly covered by it. Furthermore, the Sound Shark skin was added to the Spirit Guard's standard mask, which had a certain voice-changing effect. If Lu Jie wore the Spirit Guard's standard mask, even people who were very familiar with his voice would not be able to recognize him. Therefore, Night Leaning Moon was very curious about the reason why Lu Jie wanted to wear a mask. Lu Jie gently placed his hand on the Class 2 Creation Master's retainer crest on his chest. Upon seeing Lu Jie's action, Night Leaning Moon immediately knew what he was thinking. Night Leaning Moon heard Lu Jie speak. "Master, I'm Lin Yuan's retainer knight. Lin Yuan will also participate in the Nyx Assembly. I don't want to stand by Lin Yuan's side before his identity is exposed. More people will pay attention to me, and not Lin Yuan." Lu Jie's words were very simple, but when Night Leaning Moon heard them, she suddenly felt as if she had traveled through time and space. Back then, she seemed to be like this to the Moon Empress, right? She only wanted to silently stand by the Moon Empress' side and protect her. However, at that time, the Moon Empress did not choose her but chose Mystic Moon. It seemed that her disciple was much luckier than her. Night Leaning Moon sighed. After understanding Lu Jie's thoughts, she only softly said one word. "Okay." Then, she turned and walked out of the door. It was as if she had turned into a ball of eternal night at noon and disappeared from the land of spirit suppression. After Lin Yuan returned to the mansion, it could be said that there was nothing special to be busy with. Recently, there had been no news from the Sun family, the Dew Immortal Garden, and the Blissful Sea clan, which were cooperating with Lin Yuan. Although the transactions were still going on, even Sun Ningxiang did not contact Lin Yuan as frequently as before. As a top faction, the Dew Immortal Garden definitely had to participate in a grand event like the Nyx Assembly. There were only 3 core members left in the Sun family. According to Sun Ningxiang's need for the Bronze/Legend muscle revitalizing camellia, given Sun Ningxiang's grandmother's injuries, she probably would not be able to make it to the royal capital to participate in the Nyx Assembly. Sun Ningxiang's younger brother was still young, and was at the age where he did not know anything. Therefore, Sun Ningxiang should be participating in the Nyx Assembly alone. Given the Dew Immortal Garden's current situation of being surrounded by wolves, it should be very difficult for Sun Ningxiang to participate in this Nyx Assembly. It just so happened that Lin Yuan had a business deal at the Nyx Assembly that he wanted to discuss with Sun Ningxiang as the Moon Empress disciple. First, end of chapter. Chapter 8:15. In the past few days, Lin Yuan did not contact the Long family to ask about the royal armored martial god insects. He did not even examine the heavenly fragrance beauty butterfly and the 12 water blobs nurtured by the dead sacred source lifeforms, origin movement water. Lin Yuan pushed these matters to the back of the Nix assembly. However, the Celestial Council that happened once every 7 days went on as scheduled. This time, the Celestial Council was much more relaxed than before. The Celestial Council was held once every 7 days, and the intervals were very short. For Lin, who had a powerful background, she could do a lot of things in 7 days. However, 7 days passed by in a flash for Su. Even after 7 days of fighting, Su had not fully adapted to the abilities of the Shadow Bat. This time, the Celestial Council meeting was different from the previous meetings that had been presiding over. This time, the two of them mainly chose to listen. They listened to Lin and Su's joy of regaining new life and their experiences in the past 7 days. Before Lin and Su signed a contract with the Northern and Southern constellations, they were not considered members of the Celestial Council. Therefore, as the contractor of the Leo throne, Lin Yuan could examine Lin and Su's wills. However, they had now become official members of the Celestial Council. Lin and Su were contractors of the Andromeda and Perseus constellations. Due to the principle of respect, Lin Yuan could not casually examine their wills. Therefore, they listened to Lin and Su's story in the past 7 days with great interest. Lin's experience in the past 7 days could be said to be very dreamy. She was like a princess in a fairy tale who was under a sleeping spell. When she woke up, she became the most dazzling existence and began to live the life of a real princess from a sleeping princess. At the same time, Lin told Lin Yuan that she had awakened the beast patterns. Lin was very sure that the spirit speech white lion and azure cloud leopard beast patterns on her body must be related to Lin Yuan. Lin did not know what method Lin Yuan had used to let her regain light, but she thought that regaining the power of light could also help her awaken the hidden beast patterns in her body. Lin Yuan was rather surprised by the beast patterns that Lin had mentioned. He did not expect Lin to have 2 Fey bloodlines in her body. Once Feys reached Myth 2, they would be able to take human form. Such Feys could also have offspring with human spirit chi professionals and live happily together. However, if Lin's ancestor could awaken beast patterns in her descendants, then it was undoubtedly a creation breed Fey. However, Fey's bloodlines had always been tyrannical, and different Fey's bloodlines would clash with each other. During Chime's evolution process, the original bloodline in its body had to fight to the death with the Luan and Phoenix bloodline before it was willing to give up. Therefore, it was rare for Lin to awaken 2 beast marks. Awakening 2 types of beast patterns was equivalent to awakening 2 corresponding bloodlines of the creation breed phase. Due to the frail bodies of spirit chi professionals, they were unable to augment themselves with the power of the 2 beast patterns. However, if one were to contract 2 Feys with the same bloodline as the beast pattern, they would be able to use the beast pattern to enhance the Fey's growth. It could be said that once Lin awakened her talent, her future path would be very smooth. As the system, it was as if Lin Yuan had found a top-notch protagonist. In the future, he would not need to worry about Lin. However, on Su's side, the more Lin Yuan listened to Su's experience, the more he felt that something was wrong. In the end, Lin Yuan finally knew what the problem was. Su was now running around in the dangerous underground world with the diamond Fey storage box and the 2 bottles of spirit fluid that were used to enhance the Edge Shadow Dark Bat's strength. But he did not use them. This behavior was so stupid that it was somewhat cute. However, Lin Yuan could not explain such common sense to Su through words. This common sense was often accumulated bit by bit in life. If Lin Yuan explained it to Su, it would be equivalent to giving a lesson to Su, who was like a baby in this aspect. A lot of things had to start from the beginning. Otherwise, he would have to use one thing to explain things that Su did not understand. It was very likely that Su would get 2 things that he did not understand. If she really gave Su a lesson, she could only support the Heavenly Council for half an hour at a time with her spiritual energy. By the time Su understood all this common sense, half a year would have passed. In the end, Lin Yuan really had no choice but to use the law of consumption to pass a few books on Fey's grades and quality willpower runes, the usage of the diamond face storage box, the relationship between spirit chi professionals, phase and creation masters, and other basic knowledge to Bei-Su. The transmission of these books consumed a lot of Lin Yuan's power of the law. This situation really fulfilled the old saying that the most expensive thing in this world was knowledge. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, it was very necessary to pass this knowledge to Bei-Su. A person who wanted to struggle forward was not most afraid of setbacks and hardships, but ignorance and ignorance. What Lin Yuan wanted to do was to break the barrier of Bei-Su's ignorance and let Bei-Su have a certain understanding of these common sense. A few more days passed unknowingly, and the Nyx assembly was at hand. During this period, Princess had done her best to absorb the source energy in the law source crystals and produced a large number of law crystals. In the past few days, whenever the law crystals produced a leather bag, Lin Yuan would immediately send it to Endless Summer, in order to let Endless Summer successfully reach the pinnacle of Myth 3. However, after Endless Summer reached the pinnacle of Myth 3 and absorbed a large number of law crystals containing pure power of the law, there was still no movement to promote to a creation breed. There was a barrier that countless Fays were stuck in between Myth 3 and becoming a creation breed, and this barrier was very difficult to break. Lin Yuan's devotion to Endless Summer's law crystals had far exceeded his and Endless Summer's expectations at that time. However, Lin Yuan had such a large number of law crystals in his hands, which was enough to pay for Endless Summer's consumption. Next, Lin Yuan only needed to keep providing law crystals to Endless Summer and help it break through the myth breed barrier. In addition to purifying the law crystals, the world inside Princess Luo-kun had also become illusory after accumulating a large number of law crystals' source energy. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and thought silently in his heart. Endless Summer didn't become a creation breed Fae before the Nyx assembly as I expected. I wonder if the Dark Death Law engraved in Princess Luo-kun can successfully transform into the Dark Death world before the Nyx assembly as I expected? Lin Yuan immediately ordered Princess Luo-kun. Princess Luo-kun, inject the source energy you absorbed from the law crystals into the Dark Death Law, which is currently at the mid-stage of Myth 3. The button was sick. It really couldn't move yesterday, so it couldn't be written. I'll make up for it in the next 2 days. I'll do my best to update it. End of this chapter. Chapter 816. Lin Yuan's expression was grave when he gave the order to Princess Dress. He was no longer as confident as he had been a few days ago. Through Endless Summer's consumption of law crystals, Lin Yuan knew that he had overestimated the difficulty of transforming a myth breed Fae into a creation breed Fae. However, it turned out that he had underestimated it. Endless Summer had just reached Myth 3, and its foundation was much lower than veteran Myth 3 Faes. However, Endless Summer's talent had already made up for the lack of foundation. In terms of talent, as long as Endless Summer accumulated enough, it was destined to be qualified to experience the calamity of creation. It would also fight for a chance to transform into a creation breed from the calamity of creation. However, the talented Endless Summer had already accepted over 3,000 law crystals from Lin Yuan in the past few days. Including the law crystals that Endless Summer had consumed previously, it had now absorbed a total of 4,000 law crystals. Even with such a huge supply of law crystals, Endless Summer was still an unbreakable barrier to becoming a creation breed Fae. Endless Summer's example was right here. It was destined to be much harder than Lin Yuan expected for the Dark Death Law engraved in Princess Dress to transform into the Dark Death world. This made Lin Yuan's heart a little heavy. Everyone could only participate in one of the Great Knight General Assembly's civil, martial and martial duels. Without the Dark Death world, even if Lin Yuan used the muscle-transcending grass to become a martial arts master, he would be able to maximize the power of the Spirit Essence Explosion and deal damage equivalent to a Diamond X/Fantasy V phase all-out attack. Even so, he still did not dare to say that he could win in the cultural duels. If the Dark Death Law could not successfully transform into the Dark Death world before the Great Knight General Assembly, Lin Yuan had already planned to give up the civil and martial duels and participate in the civil duels instead. However, Lin Yuan was also gambling if he wanted to win the championship in the civil duels. If the civil duels happened to compete in increasing the phase grade, then Lin Yuan would be helpless. The Great Knight General Assembly's civil duels would definitely create an undisturbed environment for creation masters to concoct spirit fluids. Creation masters could also use their contracted phase to assist them in the concoction process. Lin Yuan could still bring genius along, although genius could use its mental strength to concoct grade 3 spirit liquid. It hadn't grasped the method of using its soul to concoct grade 4 spirit liquid. The Radiance Federation stipulated that the age range of the younger generation was below 30 years old. It also meant that creation masters from top factions, who were below 30 years old, could participate in the Great Knight Assembly's literature contest. It might be a little hard to become a Class 4 creation master at the age of 30, but it wasn't impossible to become a pinnacle Class 3 creation master. The Long Tao that Lin Yuan knew was only 26 years old this year, but he was already an advanced Class 3 creation master. With Long Tao's talent as a creation master, he would be able to become a pinnacle Class 3 creation master before the age of 30. The other Apex factions youths might not have better creation master talent than Long Tao, but there would always be youths with similar talents. When competing with such prodigies, Genius's ability, which was equivalent to a Class 3 advanced creation master, wasn't enough. Furthermore, the Bamboo Monarch and Chef Supreme also had disciples of the appropriate age. The Bamboo Monarch and Chef Supreme's disciples would definitely be superior to Long Tao in terms of creation master strength. With that thought, Lin Yuan felt that the pressure on him had increased. After Princess received Lin Yuan's order, she stopped absorbing the Law Origin crystals in her hand. Princess could not help but become a little eager to try when she sensed the source power absorbed from over 4,000 Law Origin crystals in Luo Kun. The main way for Princess to improve was to absorb the power of Law in the Law Origin crystals, and use the source power in the Law Origin crystals to strengthen the laws engraved in Luo Kun. Princess had absorbed so much of the source power in the Law Origin crystals, but she listened to Lin Yuan and didn't use it. This caused her star class to not be improved. Next, the process of improving Dark Death's law would consume a lot of source power. This process was also equivalent to improving Princess strength and star class. At that moment, the source power in Princess Luo Kun spread to Princess's entire body, causing her snow-like skin to ripple with a sparkling stream of light. At the highest point in the sky of Luo Kun's world, the Dark Plague Crow formed by Dark Death's law was competing with the Dead Dreams Law's Dream-Eating Bat. As they chased and collided, the two different dark-type laws outlined the black sky in Princess Luo Kun's world that was filled with the smell of withering and perplexity. At that moment, the source power in Princess Luo Kun's world that made the world seem illusory took the initiative to entangle the Dark Plague Crow formed by Dark Death's law in the sky. The source power kept pouring into the Dark Plague Crow's body, causing its aura to constantly expand. This caused the status of the Dark Plague Crow and the Dream-Eating Bat to change. Instead of the two being evenly matched, the Dark Plague Crow chased and the Dream-Eating Bat fled. The Dark Plague Crow formed by Dark Death's law kept becoming stronger with the injection of source power, causing the Dream-Eating Bat, which was repeatedly hit by the Dark Plague Crow, to not dare to resist anymore. The Dream-Eating Bat formed by Dead Dreams Law had no choice but to sink from the highest point in the sky to the sea level below the Dark Plague Crow. As time passed, the source power absorbed by Princess Luo Kun was also constantly being consumed. With every passing minute, close to 50 Law Origin crystal source power would be injected into the Dark Plague Crow formed by Dark Death's law. An hour had passed, and the source power in over 3,000 Law Origin crystals had finally allowed the Dark Plague Crow's aura to reach a critical point. At that moment, the Dark Plague Crow was like a tough balloon, and the injection of source power was like air. The Dark Plague Crow formed by Dark Death's law could no longer take in any more air. Lin Yuan knew that as long as he pumped source power into the Dark Plague Crow's body again, it might be possible for Dark Death's law to break through that extremely difficult threshold. After breaking through this barrier, the Dark Death rule formed by the Dark Knight Scourge Raven could evolve into the Dark Death world. After sensing the situation of Dark Death's law, Ling Yuan continued to give orders to Princess Luo Kun. Princess, directly inject the source power absorbed from 500 Law Origin crystals into the Dark Death world. Princess Luo Kun was slightly hesitant when she heard Ling Yuan's instructions. She then said, "Master, I think Dark Death's law has now reached a critical point. It's possible that the source energy absorbed from 1 to 200 Law Origin crystals will be injected into the Dark Death law. And the Dark Death law will be able to transform into the Dark Death world." Upon hearing Princess Luo Kun's words, Ling Yuan said decisively in a deep voice, "I'll use the source power in 500 Law Origin crystals." The second was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 817. At this point, Ling Yuan paused for a moment and immediately changed his words. "Don't use the source power in the 500 Law Origin crystals. Use the source power in the 700 Law Origin crystals to break through." While speaking, Ling Yuan could not help but recall his conversation with Endless Summer. According to Endless Summer, if the laws wanted to transform into a world, they did not need to absorb more power. Endless Summer now needed a large number of law crystals, not because the Enlightenment law needed to be strengthened again, but because Endless Summer needed a large amount of pure law power as an energy source for the Enlightenment law. It wanted the Enlightenment law to break free from the framework that bound it and open up a pattern that could create a world. Since it was to break out of a pattern, the more power, the better and safer it was. This was the conclusion Ling Yuan had come to after flushing the toilet. If the toilet was blocked, it would not be able to flush the toilet, even if hundreds of cups of water were poured. However, if 50 cups of water were gathered into a bucket, the bucket of water would be flushed down quickly. It was very likely that the toilet that could not be flushed with hundreds of cups of water would be flushed by the bucket of water gathered from 50 cups of water. After Princess received Ling Yuan's instructions again and understood Ling Yuan's intentions, she no longer hesitated. The source-type power within the 700 Law Origin crystals converged and surged into the body of the Dark Death, nomological form of the Dark Knight Scourge, under the control of the princess. With such a large amount of source power, the Dark Death Law's Dark Plague Raven kept changing. In the end, its entire body swelled up. Then, the Dark Death Raven, which had expanded to the limit, was blown into pieces, and the fragments instantly dispersed all over the horizon of the Luo Kun world. With these fragments as the origin, a deep shadow rose up, and the shadow immediately intertwined into boundless darkness. The darkness overlapped and turned into a world with hidden killing intent. As soon as this world was formed, it was like ink that had invaded the clear lake water, and kept spreading, as if it wanted to devour the world and Princess Luo Kun together. At that moment, Princess Luo Kun's eyes narrowed, and her dress danced. The other laws and willpower in Princess Luo Kun pounced on the Dark Death law that had just transformed into the Dark Death world under her command. However, in front of this Dark Death world, any willpower and laws seemed to be one realm apart. Not only could they not stop the expansion of the Dark Death world, but they were also easily swallowed by the Dark Death world. Just as the Dark Death world was about to refine these rules and willpower, the princess lifted her hand and took off the crown on her head. Then, he casually threw the crown into the world inside the princess' skirt. At this moment, within Princess Luo Kun's world, a huge crown that almost covered the entire sky of Luo Kun's world appeared. The crown contained infinite power as it spun, pulling the Dark Death world in front of it in an instant. In the end, under the absorption of the crown, the Dark Death world, that had just transformed from the Dark Death rules, turned into a pure black gemstone. This black gem was directly embedded in a groove on the crown. The black gem was transparent and pure. At a glance, a world filled with killing intent was constantly evolving within the pure black gem. During the evolution, a small black crow appeared in the center of the Dark Death world. The pitch-black crows circled and danced in the black gem, as if they were the core of the entire world of darkness. Upon seeing this scene, Ling Yuan knew that the Dark Death Law, which was originally at the mid-stage of Myth 3, had finally completely transformed into the Dark Death world. The price for this was the source power that the princess had absorbed from 3,700 law source crystals. After the Dark Death Law in the princess skirt had transformed into the Dark Death world, the princess star class had also changed, growing from the original 1-star to 2-star. Upon seeing the princess transform into 2-star, Lin Yuan was not only not happy, but also a little melancholic. Lin Yuan had recorded the law source crystals and law crystal fragments that the princess had absorbed since her transformation into 1-star. Although the princess star class seemed to be improving very quickly, it had risen by 1-star in a month. However, the law crystal fragments consumed by this 1-star were nearly half a kilogram, and nearly 5,000 law source crystals had been consumed. It was also thanks to the zither that Lin Yuan could continuously produce the golden lotus brocade pearls. Otherwise, relying on the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls and the phase that Lin Yuan had enhanced, he did not know how long it would take for the princess to raise her star class. Lin Yuan had been full of confidence that he now had more than 16,000 law source crystals and should be able to transform the princess from the infancy to the growth stage. Raising her star class to 4-star would obtain the second function. However, it now seemed that relying on the remaining 10,000 law source crystals would be a little difficult to elevate the princess to 3-star. Fortunately, the Dark Death Law had transformed into the Dark Death world, which was considered to have met Lin Yuan's expectations. At that moment, the princess was holding the crown and happily looking at the black gem embedded in the crown that had been transformed from the Dark Death world. The princess looked at the gem very much like Endless Summer, who had bought new jewelry. Lin Yuan stared at the princess and watched as she stared at the crown for 10 minutes, without any intention of putting it on her head. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. He did not know how other people's sacred source life forms were nurtured, but he had consumed so many law source crystals and law crystal fragments. The process of nurturing the princess was like playing a costume-changing game. However, if this was really a costume-changing game, the amount of money spent was simply too great. Lin Yuan did not interrupt the princess's appreciation of the Dark Death world. Instead, he felt the Dark Death world through his soul. As soon as he sensed it, a look of joy and excitement immediately appeared on his face. Just by feeling the strength of the Dark Death world, Lin Yuan knew why it was difficult for Myth Breed phase to break through to Creation Breed phase. Or rather, why Creation Breed phase were so much stronger than Myth Breed phase. This was because after a Fae became a Creation Breed, it would control the power of a world with a type of attribute. It was not something that the power of laws could contend with or compare with. Lin Yuan tried to mobilize the Dark Death Law's power, and in an instant, a shocking aura and pressure emerged from his body. It was like the ruler of a dark world. Previously, Lin Yuan had discovered that the law engraved in the princess's dress could not display the unique power of laws in phase bodies. It was like Endless Summer's enlightenment law, which could enlighten a plant every 5 years. The mother of Bloodbath's blood law could easily extract blood essence from phase bodies without the creation master's means. These were the unique abilities that the laws gave phase. Now the Dark Death world had also given Lin Yuan an ability, the ability to wither. Third, end of this chapter. Chapter 8:18. The wither ability was mainly targeted at plant phase. When the power of Dark Death was attached to plant phase, it could cause them to wither and decay quickly. Although Lin Yuan did not pay extra attention to the wither ability, derived from the Dark Death Law's metamorphosis into the Dark Death world, it was better than nothing. Through sensing the Dark Death world, Lin Yuan found that he could still use the Queen's Holy Sword mode to strike out the Dark Death Law like before. At the same time, under True Data, the Queen's Holy Sword embracing Sacred Sword state had a new skill-like function. This skill-like thing was formed after the Dark Death Law had metamorphosed into the Dark Death world. Sword skill, Dark Death world Dark Crow Withering Strike. Inject all the power in the Dark Death world into the Holy Sword, and the Holy Sword's blade will split into 28 night crows with the power of Dark Death. The contractor will swing the Holy Sword to strike the 28 night crows 28 times. If the 28 strikes form a combo, Each combo will trigger an additional layer of wither. Every 14 layers of wither will cause a wither strike to the target. The 56 wither strikes formed by 28 perfect combo will cause the target to enter a true wither state. Ling Yuan asked the queen, after seeing the introduction of the new sword skill, Dark Crow Withering Strike. What's the new sword skill under the Holy Sword mode's Holy Sword tip? Upon hearing that, the queen explained, Master, in the future, every time I master a world Holy Sword state, a sword skill will appear. Sword skills are completely different from using the power of the law. Although there is no difference in the way of using it, the sword skill that represents the power of the world also needs to be filled with the power of the law world again before it can be used. However, sword skills can trigger the effect of the law world, which is far more powerful than directly striking out the power of the law world. It's just that sword skills are extremely difficult. They require very strong combat skills and movement techniques to be able to combine sword skills in battle. Upon hearing the queen's words, Ling Yuan's face revealed an eager expression. Speaking of combat skills and movement techniques, even if Ling Yuan understood that there was always someone better, he still did not believe that anyone in this world could compare to him. Even if he could not combine sword skills, it would be even more impossible for others to do so. If he couldn't even combine his sword skills, then it would be even more impossible for others to combine their sword skills. It seemed that the sword skill derived from the princess' sacred sword state was completely tailor-made for him. Ling Yuan asked the princess, if I used the Dark Crow Withering Strike once, how long would it take for the energy in the Dark Death world to be completely replenished? The princess counted on her little finger for a long time before answering Ling Yuan's question. Master, if you don't replenish it with the source energy in the Law Origin Crystal, you'll need a natural month to replenish the Dark Death world's energy. If I use the source type energy in the Law Origin Crystal for support, I'll need 4 natural weeks to completely replenish it. Upon hearing that, Ling Yuan could not help but reveal a "are you kidding me" expression. What was the difference between 1 natural month and 4 natural weeks? The 4 natural weeks added up to a total of 28 days, and a natural month was only 30 days. Even with the help of source energy, it had only increased for 2 days. 2 days was too short compared to the base of 30 days. However, Ling Yuan still asked the princess, how much source energy does it take to support it? The princess asked with some heartache. Master, if you want to advance it by 2 days, you'll need to consume about 600 source energy absorbed from the Law Origin Crystal. Upon hearing that, Ling Yuan immediately decided not to use source energy to restore the sword skill's cooldown time, even if he was beaten to death. It was not that Ling Yuan did not have other complete laws now, and these complete laws could all transform into nomological worlds. With that extra nomological power, Ling Yuan might as well nurture a few more nomological worlds. That way, it would be equivalent to using another method to shorten the sword skill's cooldown time. Since the sword skill could only be used once for such a long time, Ling Yuan, who was eager to try, dispelled the idea of immediately using the Dark Crow Withering Strike to test its power. He intended to use the sword skill when he really needed it. When he checked the princess' true data, Ling Yuan keenly noticed that the words main dark/auxiliary miscellaneous had appeared in the princess' sacred source type that was not originally displayed. Sacred source name: Sacred Sword Wielding Princess, Sacred Source Species. Source family/sacred source species, Sacred Source star class. 2 stars, Sacred Source type. Main dark/auxiliary miscellaneous functions: frowny face princess form. Princess skirt. Can extract the willpower rune of a dead fae or source type item. The willpower of the dead fantasy breed phase willpower rune, or the laws in the myth breed phase law crystal, are engraved on the princess skirt. At the same time, the law crystal that has been extracted will become a law crystal containing pure power of law. Sacred sword form: Sacred Sword's blade. The blade pierces the skirt and consumes the body's spirit chi to strike out the same type of law and willpower accumulated in the skirt. Sword skill: Dark Death World Dark Crow Withering Strike. Inject all the power in the Dark Death World into the sacred sword. The sacred sword's blade will split into 28 night crows with the power of Dark Death. Chapter 819. Thus, according to the order of seats, it was the dead dream's turn to become the leader of the group. However, before the dream-eating bat could enjoy the glory of the leader in the Queen's Luo-kun world, a huge python with jade-green scales all over its body appeared in the sky. This huge jade-green python was the jade-scaled sky-devouring python that had nurtured the Myth 3 vicious poison law crystal during its lifetime. As the Queen continuously absorbed the vicious poison law in the law crystal, the jade-scaled sky-devouring python's somewhat blurry body became more and more solid. When the Queen completely extracted the vicious poison law in the law crystal, the jade-scaled sky-devouring python that appeared in the Luo-kun world's sky roared and crashed into the dream-eating bat that was flying wantonly in the sky. After a few collisions with the dream-eating bat, the dead dream's law incarnation and the jade-scaled sky-devouring python's vicious poison law incarnation were both at the mid-stage of Myth 3. Therefore, it was difficult for the two to suppress each other. After fighting for a while, there was really no result, and the jade-scaled sky-devouring python came to the ground. It dominated the land and sea, competing with the dream-eating bat in the sky. This caused the various phases formed by willpower and laws on the ground and sea to tremble in fear. Lin Yuan could not help but feel very interested as he watched the changes in the Luo-kun world after the Queen absorbed the vicious poison law. Every infusion of laws that currently played a dominant role in Luo-kun's world would cause earth-shattering changes in Luo-kun's world. After the Queen absorbed the vicious poison law, Lin Yuan's poison resistance had been greatly improved. With the Myth 3 vicious poison law in his body, even if he took a cup of water to drink the poison of an ordinary platinum poison-type Fae, it should not cause any damage to his body. As for the poison of a platinum/fantasy breed poison-type Fae, Lin Yuan dared not guarantee it. After all, some platinum/fantasy breed poison-type Faes had mental or soul toxins. In the face of mental and soul toxins, the vicious poison law could not provide Lin Yuan with the corresponding resistance. However, the poison resistance that the vicious poison law gave him could allow him to fight with some high-grade poison-type Faes without being afraid of the slightest thing. Even if he was attacked by a high-grade poison Fae, it would not cause a fatal injury in a short time. After the princess absorbed the Myth 3 law crystal, Lin Yuan ordered her to inject all the remaining source-type power in her body into the Cold Flame Law, which was only at early Myth 2. The Cold Flame Law, which had both ice and fire attributes, could give him resistance to both ice and fire at the same time. It could be said that among the 3 complete rules in Princess Luo-kun, even though the grade of the Frost Flames rule was relatively low, the priority of the Myth 2 Frost Flames rule was definitely above the Dead Dream rule and the Ferocious Poison rule, which were at the middle stage of Myth 3. At that moment, there was still some source power left in Princess Robe after transforming the Dark Death rules into the Dark Death world. This source power came from about 800 source crystals. Raising the rank of a law was much easier than transforming it into a world. He estimated that he would need about 400 laws origin crystals source-type energy to raise the Frost Flame Law at the early stage of Myth 2 to Myth 3. The princess's 800 law origin crystals injected her with the endogenous power, and the Frost Flame Law quickly advanced toward Myth 3. The additional source power allowed the Frost Flame Law to break through to Myth 3 and reach the pinnacle of Myth 3's middle stage before stopping. During the process of the Frost Flame Law being injected with source power, the snow-capped cold snow pine in Princess Luo-kun's world grew rapidly. The pine branches extended like a dragon's spine, as though they were going to pierce through the sky. The lush pine branches occupied 1/3 of the dream-eating bat's territory in the sky. As the aura of the ice flames spread, it was as though a song of ice and fire was being played in Princess Luo-kun's world. The jade-scaled sky-devouring python, which originally wanted to perch on the cold snow pine's branches, did not dare to move forward. The dream-eating bat and the jade-scaled sky-devouring python had originally been evenly matched in Princess Luo-kun's world. Now, it was a 3-way situation where the dream-eating bat, the jade-scaled sky-devouring python, and the cold snow pine were fighting each other. The broken laws and willpower that took the form of phase joined the 3 camps, immediately making the world inside Princess Luo-kun more lively. Lin Yuan was just about to test his resistance to the ice and fire elements, and let Chu Xi use the burning sunflower to burn him. However, when he looked at the time, he realized that 12 hours had passed unknowingly. There were only 20 minutes left before the agreed time with Lu Jia. Lin Yuan hurriedly left the spirit lock spatial zone. He changed into an elegant yet relatively low-key blue and white spirit chi clothing and walked out of his room. When he went downstairs, he saw Wen Yu, the mother of Bloodbath, and Chu Xi sitting on the water rhinoceros leather sofa downstairs. On the table in front of the water rhinoceros leather sofa, there were 2 brocade boxes. One box was made of moon-colored brocade embroidered with apricot patterns and moonlight totems, while the other box was made of ink-colored brocade embroidered with hundreds of types of ferocious mutated beasts. These mutated beasts seemed to sink into the darkness, but they also seemed to be on standby in the darkness, ready to break free at any time. When Lin Yuan saw that Lu Jia was not downstairs, he could not help but feel a little puzzled. He had gone downstairs 20 minutes earlier, but it was already a little late. Could Lu Jia, who had always been steady and punctual, have forgotten the time? Lu Jia was the main character of the Nyx assembly. Just as Lin Yuan was thinking, he faintly heard the sound of the door closing. Then he found Lu Jia appearing on the stairs behind him. Lu Jia looked at Lin Yuan and scratched the back of his head awkwardly. I tried out the Insect Queen's new combat style in the training room. I thought I had only trained for a short while, but I didn't expect it to be so late. Upon hearing Lu Jia's words, he knew that Lu Jia had encountered the same situation as him. However, even if time was a little tight, they could still rush to Yeyang Palace. When you saw Lin Yuan and Lu Jia coming downstairs together, she hurriedly walked over and said, "Brother Lin, you're here." "Young master, brother Lu, master, and the right keeper of the spirit guards have just delivered 2 sets of clothes. They said that the Moon Empress and Chief Guard Yi specially ordered them to deliver it. They wanted you to change into it before the official night control assembly starts." After saying that, she handed the box woven with moonlight brocade to Lin Yuan, and the box woven with ink-colored brocade to Lu Jia. At that moment, Chu Xi also came over and looked curiously at the boxes in their hands. "Lin Yuan, big brother Lu, what kind of clothes are in your boxes?" The second one was even worse. End of chapter. Chapter 820. Lin Yuan could not help but think to himself. Chu Xi addressed Lu Jia as big brother Lu, but when she addressed Lu Jia as her biological brother, she directly addressed him by his full name. However, Lin Yuan was already used to this situation. After so many years, he and Chu Xi already had the most comfortable way to get along with each other. Lin Yuan and Lu Jia opened the brocade box in their hands and were almost blinded by the clothes in the box. Under true data, there were no less than 900 kinds of rare spiritual ingredients on the clothes in the box. The return from faraway Manor's hidden dragon lake, the underground space, and the various decorations within the main residence could already be said to be exceptionally luxurious. But now, even if he sold the entire returning from faraway Manor, he would definitely not be able to exchange for a sleeve of the clothes in the brocade box. The mother of Bloodbath looked at the clothes in the brocade box and exclaimed in surprise, "It's actually Yu Hua's and Yi Che's. For a grand event like the Nyx Assembly, shouldn't the Moon Empress and Yi Che be wearing the Moon Empress and the Chief Guard Ye's robes?" The mother of Bloodbath had always known that Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. It was only when the Spirit Guard's right guard visited that the mother of Bloodbath realized that Lu Jia was the Chief Guard's disciple. On one hand, the mother of Bloodbath was surprised by Lu Jia's identity. On the other hand, it felt that Lu Jia was as low-key as Lin Yuan. The mother of Bloodbath stepped forward and carefully examined the 2 pieces of clothing in Lin Yuan's and Lu Jia's hands. After a long time, it confirmed that they weren't wearing the Moonlight Imperial robe and Night Imperial robe. Instead, it was made according to the same materials used by the Moonlight Regalia and Yi Che, and according to Lin Yuan and Lu Jia's figures. These 2 pieces of clothing did not have the moon crown pattern or the night crown pattern, which represented the status and authority of the Moon Empress and chief guard Yi. Apart from that, it could be said that they were almost exactly the same. It was no wonder that he had mistaken them. In fact, even when Yu, who had been a spirit attendant in the Radiant Moon Palace, had mistaken the attire in the brocade box for the Moonlight Royal Robe when Lin Yuan had opened it. Upon hearing the mother of Bloodbath's words, Lin Yuan and Lu Jia looked at each other. The clothes in the brocade box were too luxurious, and the accessories were too complicated. It was very inconvenient to wear them in the arena. Fortunately, the next assembly would be held in the civil arena. The martial arena and the civil and martial arena would only be held after the competition. It wouldn't be too late for him to change into the formal attire his master had personally delivered after the competition. Lin Yuan and Lu Jia stored the clothes in the brocade box into the diamond face storage box. After bidding farewell to Wen Yu, Chu Ci, and the mother of Bloodbath, they left the return from faraway manor and headed toward Yiyang Palace. He was indeed going to reveal his identity at the Nyx assembly. However, he wasn't in a hurry to appear as the Moon Empress disciple. The Nyx assembly was Lin Yuan's most direct way to contact the top faction's younger generation, and his enemies, the Zheng family and the Miao family, were also attending. When it was time to suppress his enemies, Lin Yuan would never be soft-hearted. The murals were dazzling, and the precious weapons were dazzling. Peerless beauties resided here, and the disorderly bamboos gave birth to elegance. In one of the rooms of the noble pavilion, a woman was stroking a purple bamboo with her head lowered. The woman's eyes drooped, and her hibiscus-like face was filled with guilt, causing the pearl earrings on her ears to lose their luster. At this time, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door of the woman's room. The woman turned to the door and saw a middle-aged woman with short hair walking in. Pavilion Master, according to my investigation, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden will be sending a Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master, Miao Qi, to attend the Great Night Assembly. The woman, who had been looking down with guilt on her face, immediately frowned when she heard this. A ruthless aura suddenly rose from his body. The Miao family has so many seniors in the Beast Creation Garden who can attend the Nyx assembly, but the Miao family sent Miao Qi. He's clearly trying to make life difficult for me. The capable middle-aged short-haired woman quickly lowered her head, her eyelids twitching wildly. At the same time, he thought to himself, I knew that mentioning the name Miao Qi would not end well. Every time the Pavilion Master hears the name Miao Qi, he gets angry. But it makes sense. Lord Bamboo Monarch has been in love with the Pavilion Master for many years, but the Pavilion Master has always rejected Lord Bamboo Monarch because of his bad luck. Miao Qi used this opportunity to express his goodwill to Lord Bamboo Monarch time and time again. He even openly provoked Pavilion Master, saying that Pavilion Master and Lord Bamboo Monarch could never be together. This caused the Pavilion Master to lose his sense of propriety and agreed to Lord Bamboo Monarch's pursuit, causing Lord Bamboo Monarch to be plagued with misfortune. The Pavilion Master was worried about this matter, but Miao Qi just had to jump out at this time to attend the Nyx assembly. No matter what, Miao Qi is a Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master. She wouldn't do anything inappropriate during the Great Night meeting, right? If that's the case, I really don't know what the Pavilion Master will do. Just as the middle-aged woman was lost in her thoughts, Wang Fuxiang spoke. Ah Jing, go and pick out a few pieces of clothing that old thing Bamboo Monarch gave to me. In a while, you'll be attending the meeting at Yilang Pavilion on my behalf. The short-haired middle-aged woman, Ah Jing, raised her head and looked at Wang Fuxiang in surprise. Pavilion Master, are you going to? Before Ah Jing could finish his sentence, Wang Fuxiang interrupted him with gritted teeth. I originally didn't want to show my face at the Great Night meeting. After all, the rumors about me haven't stopped for the past few years. But now that things have come to this, Miao Qi wants to publicly make a cuckold of me in front of everyone in the Great Night meeting. She's going too far. Hee, since Miao Qi wants to make a cuckold of me, then I'll give the entire Miao family a white jade fan that they must always hold in their hands for the next 2 generations. Upon hearing this, Ah Jing quickly tried to persuade Wang Fuxiang to calm down. But after thinking about it, if she could calm down, she wouldn't be the Pavilion Master. Jing quickly replied. Pavilion Master, Lord Bamboo Monarch said that he likes purple clothes the most. I'll go and bring all the purple clothes that Lord Bamboo Monarch gave to you. After speaking, Jing prepared to go to Wang Fuxiang's cloakrooms, which had close to 1,000, to pick out the purple clothes that Lord Bamboo Monarch had given to her. Fortunately, the Pavilion Master only had a little more than 1,000 cloakrooms. If she had more, she might not even be able to find all the purple clothes before the end of the Great Night Meeting. At the same time, Jing couldn't help but feel sorry for Wang Fuxiang. His Pavilion Master was a person who valued love the most, but fate had made it so that the Pavilion Master's love life would only be an illusion. It was also thanks to Lord Bamboo Monarch's formidable strength, and the fact that he was a Class 5 creation master, who could concoct spirit fluids to alleviate the misfortune. Otherwise, the Pavilion Master would really kill a person with a kiss. Third, sob sob sob. I haven't recovered from my illness. Everyone must take care of your health. End of this chapter. Chapter 821. After Jing left, Wang Fuxiang lowered her head again and gently caressed the purple bamboo beside her. A teardrop fell from Wang Fuxiang's eyes and landed on the purple bamboo's leaf. However, the bamboo leaf did not seem to be able to bear the teardrop, so it gently carried the teardrop. The teardrop slid down the bamboo leaf and onto the bamboo stem, before finally being hidden in the purple bamboo's roots. Wang Fuxiang lowered her head and looked at the purple bamboo as she murmured softly, "If only I could get rid of the body of misfortune." At this point, Wang Fuxiang's face revealed an indescribable bitterness. At this moment, Lin Yuan and Lu Jie had already reached the vicinity of Night Glory Palace. Night Glory Palace was different from the Radiant Moon Palace, located on Leaning Moon Mountain. Night Glory Palace was built inside the royal capital. Outside of Night Glory Palace was a beast head garden that occupied thousands of acres of land. The beast heads in the garden were all carved out of stone. Tens of thousands of stone beast heads were placed inside the garden. Together with the night iris planted on the ground, the entire Night Glory Palace looked like it was in the night even during the day. It was already past 6 o'clock at night, and the sky had just turned dark. However, as Lin Yuan walked through the beast head garden, he felt as though he was standing under the bright shadows of midnight lights. These stone beast heads all had glowing illum crystals in their mouths. The light emitted by the illum crystals was different from sunlight, so the picky night iris did not even bother to absorb the light emitted by the illum crystals. It was precisely because of this that the light from the illum crystals could illuminate the path from the Beast Head Garden to Night Glory Palace. While walking through the Beast Head Garden, Lin Yuan noticed that there were many figures around him. Most of these figures had outstanding auras and were dressed in appropriate spirit chi clothing. Night Glory Palace did not usually have attendants. Therefore, those who would appear in Night Glory Palace during the Nyx assembly would definitely come from a veteran faction, while those with higher status would come from an elite faction. Those with a higher status would be the true big shots, who could be called Her Majesty. At this moment, Lin Yuan heard Lu Jie speak. Along the way, the grade of the stone beast head sculptures is getting higher and higher. Most of the beast head sculptures we see now are diamond phase. We should be out of the beast head garden after a short distance. Lu Jie could not help but complain. I wonder who designed Master's beast head garden. Why does it feel like I'm walking through a spirit beast cemetery? Lin Yuan subconsciously nodded in agreement. However, Lin Yuan immediately looked at Lu Jie in surprise. On one hand, he lamented that Lu Jie's retort was very vivid. On the other hand, she wondered if it was a good idea for Lu Jie to complain about his master's place of residence. After exiting the Beast Head Garden, Lin Yuan found a different scene in front of him. The entire Yiyang Palace was made of large stones that had been carefully designed. It was filled with a kind of solemn and crude beauty. The stone pillars and hanging beams were engraved with all kinds of spirit beasts. Lin Yuan took a few glances at the carvings on the stone pillars and hanging beams, and keenly noticed that among the spirit beasts carved on the beams of Yiyang Palace, there were no dragon species phase. He did not know if Chief Guard Yi did not like dragon species phase, or if there was some other reason. since the Great Evernight Assembly's official meeting would start at midnight. Before the official meeting would be the civil and martial arena, as well as the civil and martial arena. The people who came to participate in the Nyx assembly could choose not to participate or watch the arena competition. Lu Jia was the main character of the Great Evernight Assembly, so it was a little late for him to participate in the Great Evernight Assembly at 6 o'clock. However, for the other veteran factions and top factions, this time was just right. However, the leaders and young disciples of the various veteran factions and top factions who had come to participate in the Great Evernight Assembly outside Yeong Palace held their breaths. Everyone realized that an ordinary-looking old man in a black robe was standing at the entrance of Yeong Palace. This old man's ordinary appearance was extraordinary in the eyes of the veteran factions and top factions. This old man was the left guard, Lord Zwaming, who usually followed the chief guard of the spirit guards, Night Leaning Moon. Lord Zwaming stood at the entrance of Yeong Palace with his hands behind his back. He should be waiting for someone. The younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions did not have so many thoughts, but the leaders of the older generation began to ponder. He did not know who was so prestigious as to make the left guard minister wait here specially. The various high lords should have already gathered in Yeong Palace a few days ago. In that case, the left guard was most likely waiting for someone from the younger generation. At this time, Sun Ningxiang had just stepped out of the Beast Head Garden. Although she felt extremely melancholic, her expression was still elegant and calm. When Du Immortal Garden received the invitation to the Great Evernight Assembly, Sun Ningxiang had predicted that she would definitely clash with the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. At the same time, other than the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, which was clearly interested in the Sun family's Du Immortal Garden, the other top factions might also have their eyes on the Du Immortal Garden. Sun Ningxiang did not like dealing with such a situation, but she had to deal with it. This was because the Sun family had no other suitable candidates to participate in the Great Evernight Assembly other than herself. However, Sun Ningxiang also felt a trace of anticipation in her melancholy. After her grandmother had obtained the legend-quality muscle revitalizing camellia from Sky City, the festering of her muscles had been alleviated. This was equivalent to directly relieving a lot of pressure on her grandmother. Her grandmother usually used spirit energy to wash her muscles and slow down the festering and decay of her muscles. Now that she had the legend-quality muscle revitalizing camellia to stop the festering of her muscles, new flesh had begun to grow in her originally festering muscles. If her grandmother could only live for 1 year, now that her muscles had partially recovered, it would not be a problem for her to live for 2 years, as long as she did not use her strength to trigger the injuries on her soul spirit. Sun Ningxiang could not help but wonder if Sky City would also be invited to participate in the Great Evernight Assembly, since they had so many Creation Master resources. Although the Du Immortal Garden and Sky City were just trading, Sun Ningxiang was still grateful to Sky City and that mysterious masked young man from the bottom of her heart. With the Sun family's Du Immortal Garden in such a precarious situation, the only force that was willing to help the Du Immortal Garden was Sky City, which did not take advantage of this opportunity to bite off a few pieces of the Du Immortal Garden's flesh. Just as Sun Ningxiang was letting her imagination run wild, she inadvertently saw 2 figures in front of her. These 2 figures caused Sun Ningxiang's eyes to narrow. The first one was even more terrifying. End of this chapter. Chapter 822. Sun Ningxiang saw 2 tall and well-proportioned men walking up the stone steps in front of Yeong Palace. One of the 2 men was dressed in a purple robe with bamboo patterns embroidered on it. The other wore a scarlet half-body armor that was riddled with scars of various sizes. The man in the purple robe had eyebrows that reached his temples. He was very handsome, and there was a faint smile on his face. The other man in scarlet half-body armor had deep eyes and a serious expression. However, the mole on the tip of his nose made this stern-looking man appear obedient, as if he was an easy target to bully. At this time, the left minister, Zwaming, who was standing in front of Yeong Palace, smiled and greeted the young man in the purple robe and scarlet half-body armor. Lord Gulang, Lord Zhongzhe, Lord Bamboo Monarch, and Lord Chef Supreme are still in a meeting inside Yang Palace. If the two of you don't like crowds, why don't I bring you to the tea room in Yiyu Pavilion for some refreshments? Or to the training room in Yiyu Pavilion to wait for the matches to begin? When Gu Lang heard Zhuo Ming's words, he immediately bowed politely. Zhongzhe nodded at the left minister, Zhuo Ming, and greeted him coolly. Gu Lang remembered that his master, Bamboo Monarch, was still in a meeting, so he glanced at the many young disciples of the veteran and top forces. He thought that there would be a lot of fun in the outer palace. Just as he was about to tell Zhuo Ming that he didn't want to go to Yiyu Pavilion, he heard Zhongzhe say, "Senior Zhuo Ming, please lead the way. Senior Zhuo Ming, please lead the way. Gu Lang and I can also use Yiyu Pavilion's training room to spar." Gu Lang and Zhongzhe were old friends, so he naturally knew what kind of person Zhongzhe was. Zhongzhe was a ruthless character who had almost killed his path protector. He was definitely a top battle maniac. If Gu Lang and Zhongzhe fought in Yiyu Pavilion's training room and made Zhongzhe excited, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to use his trump cards in the double arena. Just as Gu Lang was about to firmly reject Zhongzhe, he saw Zhongzhe put his hand on his shoulder and said with a fanatical look, "Gu Lang, don't worry. Master has already given me special training several times and taught me how to control my emotions during battle. This time, our spar will definitely not go overboard. It won't affect the arena competition. When the time comes, we'll have a good fight in the civil and martial arena." Gu Lang looked at Zhongzhe skeptically when he heard this. Seeing the uncontrollable passion in Zhongzhe's eyes, Gu Lang felt that Zhongzhe's words were unreliable. But since Zhongzhe had invited him over and over again, Gu Lang couldn't refuse him. Thus, he simply gave up on the idea of eating melons in the outer hall and prepared to exchange a few blows with Zhongzhe in Yi Yuting's training room. Thus, the left minister, Zhuo Ming, brought Zhongzhe and Gu Lang through the Silent Night Corridor, a place that the veteran factions and peak factions were not allowed to enter during the Nix assembly, and headed for the Night Whisper Pavilion. At this moment, Sun Ningxiang noticed that the left minister, Zhuo Ming, had turned around to look behind him. Sun Ningxiang raised an eyebrow in surprise when she saw Zhuo Ming's actions. Zhuo Ming was the left chief official, and was the bureau chief's right-hand man. Naturally, he wasn't a person who was hesitant. The fact that Zhuo Ming had turned around while bringing Zhongzhe and Gu Lang to the Night Whisper Pavilion meant that Gu Lang and Zhongzhe weren't the people Zhuo Ming was waiting for. The people Zhuo Ming was waiting for hadn't arrived, but Gu Lang and Zhongzhe's status had forced Zhuo Ming to receive them. From the looks of it, the identity of the people Zhuo Ming was waiting for was obvious. This Nix assembly was organized by the bureau chief for her disciple, and it was rumored that the Moon Empress had also accepted a disciple. From the looks of it, the left minister, Zhuo Ming, should be waiting for his young mistress, or the Moon Empress disciple. Sun Ningxiang's eyes were fixed on Zhuo Ming, and she noticed that Zhuo Ming's gaze paused when he scanned the crowd. Sun Ningxiang quickly followed Zhuo Ming's gaze, and immediately saw a man wearing the Spirit Guard's standard mask at the end of Zhuo Ming's line of sight. Sun Ningxiang saw that the man wearing the Spirit Guard's standard mask felt Zhuo Ming's gaze, and gently shook his head. Zhuo Ming then turned around, and continued to lead the way for Zhongzhe and Gu Lang. At that moment, almost everyone's eyes were on Gu Lang and Zhongzhe. These two were the Bamboo Monarch and Chef Supreme's treasures. They were also publicly recognized as the most qualified candidates to compete for the current Radiance envoys among the Radiance Federation's younger generation. They were existences that couldn't be seen, even if one wanted to. Many of the young women from the veteran factions and pinnacle factions wished they could embed their gazes on Gu Lang and Zhongzhe. If it wasn't for the fact that they didn't dare to step forward and were afraid of offending the nobles, these women with glowing eyes would probably turn into octopuses and wrap around them tightly. However, Sun Ningxiang's attention wasn't on Zhongzhe and Gu Lang at all. After seeing Zhuo Ming's action, Sun Ningxiang's gaze never shifted away from them. Apart from Chief Guard Yi, only Chief Guard Ye's disciple could instruct Zhuo Ming by shaking his head. The left minister was loyal to Chief Guard Yi, and he represented Chief Guard Ye's will. Even if the Chef Supreme and Bamboo Monarch spoke, they couldn't instruct the left minister to do anything. After some thought, Sun Ningxiang was able to confirm the identity of the man wearing the spirit guard's mask. As for Lin Yuan, Sun Ningxiang only felt that his figure was vaguely familiar, so she took a few more glances at his face. Sun Ningxiang was certain that Lin Yuan was not a member of the top faction's younger generation, but she was not sure about his identity. Sun Ningxiang couldn't confirm Lin Yuan's identity, so she didn't think too much about it. She took a deep breath and walked up the stairs in front of Yiyang Palace. He was prepared to go to the outer palace to endure the storm that was bound to be caused by someone because of his arrival. Lin Yuan's body was enhanced by numerous willpower and laws, and his senses were far sharper than those of ordinary people. Therefore, when Sun Ningxiang looked at him, he keenly captured her gaze. After seeing Sun Ningxiang, Lin Yuan's face immediately revealed a smile. Lin Yuan turned to look at Lu Jia. "Brother Lu, why don't we stay in the outer palace of the Yiyang Palace before the fight begins?" Lu Jia nodded in response, and didn't say anything else. Instead, he subconsciously placed his hand on his chest, where the Creation Master's retainer crest used to be. However, due to the Nix assembly and Lin Yuan's request, Lu Jia took off the Creation Master's retainer crest, which he valued as much as his life, from his chest. Based on Lu Jia's understanding of Lin Yuan wasn't a person who liked to watch the fun. Therefore, Lin Yuan must have his own reasons for wanting to stay in the outer palace. The second night. There's still one more night. Sob, sob, sob. End of this chapter. Chapter 823. This purpose must be related to the development of Sky City, but Lu Jia was not good at socializing between factions. Recently, Lu Jia did not bother to study the development of Sky City's factions like before. Instead, he used his time apart from training to focus on the implementation of Sky City's white-clothed followers plan. Since he could not help Lin Yuan in the outer palace in a while, Lu Jia, who was by Lin Yuan's side, decided to fulfill his most essential duty. As a shield and sword, he would protect Lin Yuan's safety at the Nix assembly. Lin Yuan and Lu Jia followed behind Sun Ningxiang and arrived at the outer palace through the stone pillar archway. Lin Yuan knew the situation and crisis that the Sun family's Duo Immortal Garden was facing, but he did not expect someone to jump out as soon as Sun Ningxiang arrived at the outer palace. Every faction participating in the Nix assembly had their faction's logo on their clothes. It was very rare to see people like Lin Yuan, who wore Spirit Chi clothes without any faction's logo. According to the logo on the Spirit Chi clothes, Lin Yuan could recognize the identity of the two young men in front of Sun Ningxiang. The two young men looked somewhat similar, with the iconic nose bridge and eyebrows. Just based on their appearance, it could be seen that they were definitely cousins, even if not biological brothers. However, based on their stands, it could be seen that they had completely different statuses. Upon seeing this scene, Lin Yuan could not help but reach out and touch his chin. The stage was actually set up so quickly. Moreover, the protagonists also stood on the stage as soon as it was set up. It was really fast. Among the two young men, the one standing opposite Sun Ningxiang and clashing with her aura was wearing purple Spirit Chi clothes. Lin Yuan had seen this purple Spirit Chi clothes before. It was the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden's iconic 100 Beast seedling attire. Based on the man's sleeves full of sprouts on the collar of the new 100 Beast seedling attire, he definitely had the most core identity among the young direct descendants of the Miao family. The young man next to the man in the new 100 Beast seedling attire was wearing a standard Creation Master attire. The man's Creation Master robe had a big Zheng written on the collar. According to the information on the Zheng family, this young man in the Creation Master robe must be the Zheng family's second young master, who had a feud with Lin Yuan. There were different arches in the outer palace and the inner palace of the Yiyang Palace. The leaders of all the old and top powers had already gone to the inner palace. The outer palace was a place for the younger generation to interact. Therefore, this young man who was dressed in the new 100 Beast seedling costume of the Miao family spoke without much consideration. Haha, Sun Ningxiang. You have been avoiding talking to me about working with the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. This time, we're standing face to face. I don't think you're going to keep me at arm's length. As he spoke, the man whistled lightly, appearing very frivolous. Among the younger generation of Yi Yang Palace's outer palace, most of them came here to make friends. After all, there weren't many opportunities to gather the younger generation of the various major powers. On the other hand, there were also some people who came to watch the show. Seeing that there were people here fighting tit for tat, many disciples of veteran forces came over. It was rare to see a direct descendant of a peak force make a fool of himself. Lin Yuan noticed that the Blissful Sea clan's young master, Chi Haitao, was among these people. Lin Yuan was originally lamenting that the stage had just been set up, and the protagonists were already all on stage. Now even the supporting characters were on stage. Sun Ningxiang looked at the veteran faction disciples gathering around, and the direct descendants of the other top factions who were watching the show. Her expression did not change. She took a deep breath and said, Miaozhua, the Duo-Immortal Garden has always been very principled. If someone wants to talk about working with us sincerely, the Duo-Immortal Garden will naturally not reject them. If someone wants to talk about working with us sincerely, the Duo-Immortal Garden will naturally not reject them. Upon hearing Sun Ningxiang's words, Miaozhua's face darkened. Although Sun Ningxiang did not say it directly, it was obvious from her words that the Beast Creation Garden was not sincere about working with the Duo-Immortal Garden. Therefore, Sun Ningxiang had always avoided talking about it. This kind of thing was as clear as a mirror in everyone's heart, but they could never say it aloud. If Sun Ningxiang said it now, it would be equivalent to confirming that the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden was not sincere about working with others. In this place where the disciples of veteran factions and top factions were everywhere, Sun Ningxiang's words were basically equivalent to attacking the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden's credibility. Just as Miaozhua was about to retaliate, Sun Ningxiang spoke again. I, Sun Ningxiang, am the current clan head of Duo-Immortal Garden, the leader of a peak force. You, Miaozhua, are just one of the more favored disciples of the Miao family. Can you decide the development path of the Beast Creation Garden? Can it decide the allocation of the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden's creation master resources? If you can't even do that, what qualifications do you have to stand in front of me and talk about cooperation with me? If you want to talk about cooperation, tell your father Miao Linsheng to come and talk to me personally. Sun Ningxiang's words immediately made Miaozhua's face turn as black as the bottom of a pot. Miaozhua glared at Sun Ningxiang and said coldly, The Duo-Immortal Garden's forces are already riddled with holes. I'm afraid that even the veteran forces are inferior to them. You guys! Before Miaozhua could finish his sentence, Sun Ningxiang interrupted him sternly. Sun Ningxiang's sharp gaze swept across the surroundings as she raised her voice. You're saying that my Sun family's Duo-Immortal Garden is inferior to the veteran forces? There are so many veteran forces here. You can casually ask around and see which of them dares to say that their forces are stronger than my Duo-Immortal Garden? Or you can ask the person beside you if their Zheng family has our Sun family's strong forces? Sun Ningxiang completely unleashed her aura, with just a few words, and forcefully countered Miaozhua's provocation. As she spoke, Sun Ningxiang's fists were clenched tightly as she tried her best not to weaken her aura. Sun Ningxiang knew that if her aura weakened, the other observing top factions would feel that the Duo-Immortal Garden was really not going to make it. The Duo-Immortal Garden would then face an even greater crisis. At that moment, Miaozhua felt as though he was being held hostage by Sun Ningxiang. After all, the Duo-Immortal Garden had an Emperor-class expert presiding over it. This was also the main reason why the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden had never dared to make a move on the Duo-Immortal Garden. With an Emperor-class expert presiding over the Duo-Immortal Garden, no matter what happened, it was not something that the veteran forces could compare with. Under such circumstances, Miaozhua naturally would not be foolish enough to drag his cousin, Zheng Kaiyuan, into the water. At that moment, Miaozhua's eyes flickered, and he reached out and pointed in Lin Yuan's direction. Third, end of this chapter. Chapter 824. Miaozhua asked Lin Yuan, That kid over there, tell us which faction is stronger among the top factions, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, or the Sun family's Do Immortal Garden? That kid over there. I'll let you tell us which faction is stronger. The Meow family's Beast Creation Garden, or the Sun family's Do Immortal Garden? Miaojua's words made everyone present involuntarily look at Lin Yuan. Since Lin Yuan and Lu Jie had walked in behind Sun Ningxiang was immediately targeted by Miaojua and became the center of the storm in the outer palace. Since Lin Yuan and Lu Jie had walked in behind Sun Ningxiang had been targeted by Miaojua the moment she entered the outer palace and became the center of the storm in the outer palace. Lin Yuan's performance in the all-star match had been really outstanding. He had defeated a member of the Barbarian Snake Guild Club's main force without even summoning his fae. Lin Yuan's performance in the all-star match had been really eye-catching. He had defeated a member of the Barbarian Snake Guild Club's main force without even summoning his fae. It had already become a hot topic on StarWeb. As a member of the younger generation, the veteran faction disciples and the top faction disciples naturally recognized Lin Yuan. In fact, many people had even specially inquired about Lin Yuan's identity before this. However, no matter how they inquired, there was no result. It was as though Lin Yuan had appeared out of thin air. This made those who had inquired about Lin Yuan even more curious. In this era where strength was equivalent to resources, even if a spirit chi professional was extremely talented, had a wide range of contracts with fays, and could easily comprehend willpower runes, they would not be able to become stronger without sufficient resources. However, if he did not have enough resources, he would not be able to become stronger. This meant that Lin Yuan definitely had the support of massive resources. Now that Lin Yuan was qualified to attend the Nyx assembly, it just proved this point. Seeing that Miaojua had pointed the spearhead at him, Lin Yuan revealed a playful expression. The stage had originally been set up, and the leading and supporting roles were almost all there. However, he had not been given a chance to step on the stage. Lin Yuan had been secretly thinking about how to join in. Now that he had not done anything, Miaojua's words had given him a legitimate chance to join. Sun Ningxiang's gaze also swept over Lin Yuan. When she saw him, she also saw Lu Jie, who was wearing the Spirit Guard's standard mask. This caused Sun Ningxiang's forceful aura to suddenly tense up. Since Lin Yuan was traveling with the Spirit Guard's masked man, it meant that Lin Yuan and the masked man were friends. Regardless of Lin Yuan's identity, Miaojua dragging Lin Yuan into the storm was equivalent to dragging the man wearing the Spirit Guard's standard mask into the water. It wasn't a big deal to cause a disturbance among the younger generation at the Nyx assembly, but if the main character of the Nyx assembly was involved, that would be a huge mistake. The fact that his grandmother had killed 3 Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Masters had already incurred the displeasure of Chief Guard Yi. Because of this disturbance, if Bureau Chief Yi were to hold Bureau Chief Yi accountable, the Miao family's Darch-level experts could help Miaojua plead for leniency. Furthermore, with his grandmother's current condition, she couldn't show her face in public no matter what. Otherwise, the greatest secret of the Sun family's Do Congealing Immortal Garden would be exposed to the world. Now, the Do Congealing Immortal Garden, which he had forcefully supported, would completely become fish meat for the other forces to feast on. Thinking of this, Sun Ningxiang felt that her aura could no longer be maintained. At this moment, Sun Ningxiang heard the clear voice of a young man. Naturally, there wouldn't be any veteran powers that are stronger than the Dew Condensation Immortal Garden. Otherwise, those veteran powers would have long been promoted to peak powers. The old forces aren't fools. They all care about their reputation. Naturally, they don't like being compared to others like this. The young man's clear voice stunned Miaojua, Sun Ningxiang, Zheng Kaiyuan, and the disciples from the old and peak forces. Then their gazes changed. More people from the outer palace of Yeyang Palace gathered in this small circle. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Miaojua had purposely chosen someone who didn't have a mark on him. This method was also to prevent the veteran forces that he had named from making things difficult for them and forming enmity with them. At the same time, Miaojua's question directly changed the concept of his conversation with Sun Ningxiang. He made the comparison between the Sun family's Do Immortal Garden and the veteran factions into a comparison between the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. When the Sun family's Do Immortal Garden was at its peak, it was naturally not afraid of the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. It was ranked in the top 20 among the top 50 factions. However, now that the Do Immortal Garden's creation master resources had been depleted, it was already at the bottom of the top factions, and could not be compared to the Beast Creation Garden at all. Furthermore, the Beast Creation Garden was known for its creation master resources. In the eyes of ordinary people, the Beast Creation Garden was often more impressive than the other top factions. However, Miaozhua didn't expect that the person he had casually picked would not continue with his words. Instead, he had answered the question that he had wanted to avoid. It would have been fine if that was the case, but the person he had pointed out had said that the veteran factions didn't want to be mentioned and compared to others. Wasn't this the same as saying that he didn't put the veteran factions in his eyes, and was pulling the veteran factions' hatred out of thin air? With this thought, the anger in Miaozhua's heart burned. If they weren't in the outer palace of Yeyang Palace, Miaozhua really wanted to grab Lin Yuan's collar and slap him a few times. Why didn't he just ask Lin Yuan who he was talking to? Miaozhua still had some reservations about Sun Ningxiang, but he didn't intend to be polite to Lin Yuan, who didn't even have a faction mark on him. Miaozhua looked at Lin Yuan and said in a gloomy tone, "Since you know that the old factions want face, then you should know that the Beast Creation Garden wants face even more." As soon as Miaozhua finished speaking, he saw the young man looking in a direction in the crowd and speaking unhurriedly. The Miao family's Beast Creation Garden wants face, but it doesn't seem to be very successful. Even the veteran factions that you look down on don't give face to the Beast Creation Garden. Some of the veteran factions even brought the Beast Creation Garden's breach of contract to the Spirit Guards. No matter how much the Beast Creation Garden cares about their reputation, they won't give any less compensation. Miaozhua's eyes immediately fixed on the Blissful Sea Clan's young family head, Qi Haitao. Upon seeing Qi Haitao, Miaozhua's eyes instantly turned red. Miaozhua's bloodshot eyes startled Qi Haitao. The conflict with the Blissful Ocean tribe was the greatest humiliation to the Miao family. However, the Blissful Sea Clan had spent a huge sum of money to form an alliance with the Five Emperors mercenary group. The Blissful Sea Clan had paid the Five Emperors mercenary group a large amount of resources and bought a few islands, while the Five Emperors mercenary group was responsible for the safety of the Blissful Sea Clan members and the island's businesses. The first was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 825. With the 5 Tharch mercenaries around, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden would not be able to attack the Blissful Ocean tribe. Otherwise, they would have to face the 5 Tharch mercenaries. This was why the Blissful Sea Clan could still be invited by the Nyx assembly to appear in the Night Palace. Miaozhua said coldly to Qi Haitao, "The people from the Sea of Bliss tribe aren't hiding on the island obediently. Are they here at the Nyx assembly to find some creation teachers to cooperate with them?" Miaozhua's expression was cold, but his tone was calm. When he spoke to Qi Haitao, his aura was restrained, but from Miaozhua's calm tone, everyone present could feel the killing intent. They knew that the storm had turned into a conflict when the youth mentioned Qi Haitao. Seeing Miaozhua's reaction, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a trace of satisfaction. Now, Qi Haitao had no choice but to open his mouth and sing on the stage. Lin Yuan did not want the Blissful Ocean tribe to get involved in this conflict and make the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden feel pressured. To be honest, the Blissful Ocean tribe could not make the Miao family feel pressured. Lin Yuan did this because he wanted to escalate the conflict. On the other hand, he wanted the Blissful Ocean tribe to feel more pressure from the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. The more pressure the Blissful Ocean tribe felt, the closer they would cooperate with Sky City. It would also be more urgent to pour resources into nurturing the angelfish of Blissful. This way, the aurora pollen that Lin Yuan bought from the market would be more useful. Sun Ningxiang did not know why, but when she heard the youth's clear voice, she suddenly felt a trace of courage. Sun Ningxiang's aura, that was about to collapse, instantly propped up. When Sun Ningxiang saw Lin Yuan outside the night palace, she felt that he looked familiar. Later, she remembered that he was the youth who had appeared at the all-star match. But then Sun Ningxiang was puzzled. He had indeed watched the all-star competition, but a single match wasn't enough to give him a sense of familiarity. He had definitely met this youth named Lin Yuan before. After hearing Lin Yuan's voice, Sun Ningxiang suddenly felt that this youth's voice was very similar to that of the masked youth in Sky City. Looking at their figures, they were almost the same. Then, Sun Ningxiang carefully sized up Lin Yuan's chin and silently sketched an image in her heart. Sun Ningxiang tried to imagine the strange mask on Lin Yuan's face and compared it with the appearance of the Sky City youth in her memory. After comparing, Sun Ningxiang's eyes lit up, because the two of them almost perfectly overlapped in her heart. In this world, there were indeed situations where two people were very similar. It was indeed child's play to determine whether two people were the same person based on their appearance and voice. Sky City and the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden had quite a feud because of the Du Immortal Garden. The Miao family's Beast Creation Garden had been using all sorts of methods to pressure Sky City. If this young man was really from Sky City, then everything he said about the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden could be explained. Sun Ningxiang was a master of words. The first time she discussed cooperation with the masked youth in Sky City, she discovered that the masked youth was hostile to the Blissful Sea tribe. It coincided with how Lin Yuan had inadvertently dragged the Blissful Sea clan's young family head, Chi Haitao, into the vortex. It may be a coincidence that there is one point of doubt in a question. If many points of doubt and evidence pointed to the same point, then that point was most likely the truth. Sun Ningxiang subconsciously moved half a step in Lin Yuan's direction, and then lowered her breath, preparing to see the situation before making a response. Miao Zhua had called out Chi Haitao, so he knew that Miao Zhua was going to find trouble with him. When the Blissful Sea tribe had brought the contract to the spirit guards to ask for compensation from the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, they were already destined to fall out with the Beast Creation Garden. There was no room for negotiation. Since there was no room for negotiation, there was no use in humbling himself. He would only be humiliated for no reason. Therefore, Chi Haitao became tough and looked at Miao Zhua. The Blissful Sea tribe has always been doing things according to the rules. It was your Beast Creation Garden that violated the contract first. The Blissful Sea tribe just wants to get the compensation after your Beast Creation Garden violated the contract. As for finding Creation Master resources, the Blissful Sea tribe really doesn't need them. After cooperating with Sky City, the Blissful Sea tribe's Creation Master resources have already overflowed. However, young Master Miao is right about the word cooperation. The Blissful Sea tribe has bred a large number of Supreme Great Angelfish of Blissful, and soon, they will start auctioning high-quality Angelfish of Blissful. If any faction wants to conduct a large transaction with the Blissful Sea tribe, they can come to me, Chi Haitao. Chi Haitao spoke very loudly, and it was also an opportunity to advertise for the Blissful Sea tribe. He wanted to see if he could get some cooperation. Even though the Blissful Sea tribe was being suppressed by the Beast Creation Garden, many factions that had cooperated with the Blissful Sea tribe had received a warning from the Beast Creation Garden and started to distance themselves from the Blissful Sea tribe. They had even cut off all contact with the Blissful Sea tribe. If it was in the past, Chi Haitao would definitely be very concerned about such a heavy blow to his connections. But now, even if no faction had a good relationship with the Blissful Sea tribe, as long as the Blissful Sea tribe could maintain the cooperation with Sky City, the Blissful Sea tribe's development would definitely not be bad. After all, the Blissful Sea tribe had a monopoly on the Angelfish of Blissful market. Spirit-type Fays might be considered rare among the Fays, but the Radiance Federation still had a huge base of spiritual-type Fays. With a spiritual-type Fey around, they would definitely need the Angelfish of Blissful Sea tribe's clothes, which could be mass-produced. Therefore, once the Blissful Sea tribe solved the problem of Creation Master resources, they wouldn't need to be afraid of the Beast Creation Garden's suppression and the severing of their connections. The situation might be like this, but Chi Haitao's words made Miao Zhua, who was already burning with rage, unable to suppress his temper. Miaozhua shifted his gaze back to Lin Yuan. He then scanned Lin Yuan and Qi Haitao a few times before saying, "There is still some time before the martial arena. Why don't the three of us follow the martial arena's rules and have some fun at the arena over there?" Everyone who was watching the show immediately knew that Miaozhua couldn't help but want to make a move. The martial arena's rules stated that as long as the opponent wasn't killed before the opponent admitted defeat, the opponent could make any kind of attack. When the martial arena officially started, there would definitely be experts on the arena to control the situation. They would try their best to ensure that the loser wouldn't suffer serious injuries if one side was defeated. If Miaozhua's challenge was accepted, he would definitely be ruthless during the fight. The second round, end of this chapter. Chapter 826. The onlookers really hoped that Miao Zhudi's battle would proceed smoothly. The conflict between the Miao family's beast creation garden and the blissful ocean clan was old news. No one was interested in it. However, everyone was very curious about Lin Yuan's strength. As the favorite core disciple of the beast creation garden, Miaozhua's ability was far superior to that of Meng Su from the Savage Snake Guild Club. As a B-rank spirit chi professional, Miaozhua should have used the Starlight Jitan to temper his phase. In that case, Miaozhua's strongest fei would be a diamond/fantasy breed. If he were to fight Miaozhua, the mysterious fei that he had not summoned during the all-star match should reveal itself. At this moment, Zheng Kaiyuan, who was standing beside Miaozhua, reached out his hand to pull Miaozhua and whispered in his ear, "Cousin, I heard from my mother that you have been following grandfather for the past few months to increase your strength as a creation master. You are just one step away from becoming a Class 4 creation master. You might not know, but the young man in front of you is the one who injured the main members of the club that my cousin invested in." Miaozhua furrowed his brows. Although Miaozhua had been in seclusion for a few months, he had logged into the Star Web quite a few times during the 10 days he had been in the royal capital. Miaozhua, who loved reading his posts, had more or less heard about Lin Yuan's situation. However, Miaozhua did not know what Lin Yuan looked like since he had never watched the all-star match. Otherwise, he would not have pointed Lin Yuan out. At that moment, a figure suddenly approached him and gave him a bear hug. Gao Feng looked at Lin Yuan and said, "I just sent you a few text messages, but you didn't reply. So you got into a conflict here." After speaking, Gao Feng stood beside Lin Yuan naturally and frowned at Miaozhua. "Miaozhua, Lin Yuan is my brother. Finding trouble with Lin Yuan is the same as finding trouble with me, Gao Feng." Gao Feng's actions showed that he and Lin Yuan were very familiar with each other. Otherwise, as a disciple of a top faction, Gao Feng would not have stood firmly by Lin Yuan's side when he saw Lin Yuan and Miaozhua going against each other. Lin Yuan felt warmth in his heart when he saw Gao Feng's actions. When Lin Yuan interacted with others, as long as he was sure of their relationship, he would wholeheartedly invest. Gao Feng's actions also proved that Gao Feng wasn't lying when he said that he was his brother. In his heart, Gao Feng had treated Lin Yuan as a good brother. Otherwise, Gao Feng wouldn't have stood firmly by his side in the face of a top force that was stronger than the Gao family. Gao Feng didn't know that Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. The disciples of the top forces and veteran forces were all shocked by Gao Feng's sudden appearance and actions. Gao's Feng. I've never heard of any conflict between the Gao and Miao families. However, Gao Feng and Lin Yuan's familiarity also indicated that Lin Yuan's identity was definitely extraordinary. It was just that most of the younger generation of the 50 top factions present knew each other, but they had never heard of Lin Yuan. Miaozhua's frown deepened when he saw Gao Feng suddenly choose a side. On one hand, he guessed that Gao Feng chose a side because of Lin Yuan on the surface. On the other hand, could it be related to the Sun family's duo-mortal garden? On the other hand, he was facing two pinnacle factions, a veteran faction, and Lin Yuan, whose identity was unknown. Miaozhua could not help but be in a difficult position. Miaozhua didn't know what to do with two top factions, a veteran faction and Lin Yuan. Long Tao and Li Xian walked to Lin Yuan's side and greeted him warmly. Long Tao and Li Xian walked to Lin Yuan's side and greeted him warmly. Long Tao and Li Xian walked to Lin Yuan's side and greeted him. At this time, many of the veteran forces disciples who were watching the show had already cried out in surprise. It was rare for Lin Yuan to be friends with Gao Feng, but they didn't expect him to be so familiar with Long Tao and Li Xian. Gao Feng's reaction showed that he was not familiar with Long Tao and Li Xian, which meant that Lin Yuan didn't know them because of Gao Feng. Li Xian was fine. Li Yin Niao Kim was developing quickly, but it didn't have an emperor-class expert. It was only a lower-middle existence among the top factions. But Long Tao was completely different. Long Tao was the Long family's Coiled Dragon Valley's only direct descendant, and the recognized young family head. Just like Gao Feng, his words and actions represented the faction he belonged to. Long Tao was not only the Coiled Dragon Valley's young family head, but also the Radiance 100 Sequences Sequence 3. He had always been arrogant, and would spit out yin and yang auras whenever he opened his mouth. Many top faction disciples had been disgusted by Long Tao's yin and yang auras. Long Tao didn't think much of the other top faction's members. However, Long Tao had placed his hand on Lin Yuan's shoulder naturally, which was truly shocking. Li Xian looked at Lin Yuan with undisguised gratitude and respect. This made Lin Yuan's identity even more thought-provoking. Seeing Gao Feng, Long Tao, and Li Xian looking for him, Lin Yuan knew that as long as Miaozhua wasn't stupid, this storm was destined to end. Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh. He had used the Miao family's beast creation garden to pressure the Blissful Sea clan. However, this storm didn't happen. It was still a little short of Lin Yuan's plan. After greeting Lin Yuan, Li Xian looked at Miaozhua and said coldly, "Targeting Lin Yuan is targeting me." Li Xian's words might be simple, but they were very imposing. As soon as Li Xian finished speaking, Long Tao picked up where Li Xian left off and opened his thin lips towards Miaozhua. "I heard that Master Miao Qi specially brought you here this time. I'm afraid Master Miao Qi knows that you've been causing trouble here and offended people you shouldn't have. Is he regretting not leaving you in the Beast Creation Garden and bringing Miao Ju and Miao He here? Miao Ju and Miao He are actually much stronger than you in this generation of the Miao family." Upon hearing Long Tao and Li Xian's words, Miaozhua snorted with a livid expression and tried his best to comfort himself. Long Tao's mouth was the crotch of cotton pants. Long Tao's mouth was a stinky latrine pit. Long Tao's mouth was a big sauce bowl. After forcefully calming his anger, Miaozhua pointed at Qi Haitao. "Qi Haitao, we'll settle our matters after the next conference." Then Miaozhua pointed at Lin Yuan's nose. Just as Miaozhua was about to say, "As for you," a shadow that seemed to be entangled with a soul shot toward Miaozhua's finger. Then, the shadow collided with Miaozhua's hand that was pointing at Lin Yuan, causing Miaozhua's hand and arm to curl up strangely. Third chapter. Seeking recommendation votes. Monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 827. His hand and arm curled together and let out a crisp cracking sound. Then, there was an ear-piercing sound of friction. Miaozhua, who had just pointed his finger at Lin Yuan's nose, immediately let out a miserable howl. The fingers were connected to the heart, and it would cause one to grimace in pain if one's fingers collided with anything. Moreover, Miaozhua's fingers, palm, and forearm had bent into a spiral arc. Just by looking at the arc of Miaozhua's arm, anyone with a discerning eye would know that the bones in his arm must have been broken. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a complete bone rod to twist into such a strange arc. As Miaozhua let out a heart-wrenching howl, a misty soul shadow gathered on Miaozhua's shoulder like drifting orchid petals. An elegant mantis with a strange soul shadow wrapped around its body, and a pair of orchid petal-like blades appeared on Miaozhua's neck. The petite and elegant mantis looked no more than 7 or 8 centimeters long, but its body emitted a powerful soul wave. The mantis gently sucked in the direction of Miaozhua's head, and there seemed to be a faint shadow being pulled out of Miaozhua's body. The instant the petite mantis sucked in the direction of Miaozhua's head, Miaozhua's miserable howl stopped. The more intense soul pain made Miaozhua's vocal cords spasm, and he could not make any sound. Just as the shadow-like thing in Miaozhua's body was pulled out, A layer of faint golden light suddenly appeared on Miaojua's body. Then, the shadow that was about to be pulled out slowly shrank back into Miaojua's body. Just as the petite and elegant mantis and the golden light were about to start a tug-of-war over the shadow, the petite mantis' orchid-like blades suddenly slashed across the shadow. The blades cut off a piece of the shadow. After the petite mantis sucked the shadow into its mouth with satisfaction, it turned into an orchid-like shadow. When the petite mantis appeared again, it had landed on Miaojua's shoulder. As early as when this petite mantis had attacked Miaojua, Lin Yuan had already used Morbius True Data to check on this petite mantis. Fey name: Orchid Petal Blade Mantis, Dead Soul Centipede. Fey species: Centipede genus/wingless insect. Fey grade: Diamond 10 out of 10. Fey type: Spiritual Fey quality. Legend skills: Frowny Fey soul absorption. Uses the power of absorbing souls to pull out the soul hidden in the target's mind. Soul attached death seed. A soul seed is produced in the depths of a living being's mind. The soul seed will completely fuse with the soul, and when the body dies, it can choose any target with the soul seed to devour and occupy the target's body. Soul exploding death bullet. Induces the soul seed in the target's body to mutate. After occupying the target's soul, the target's body will self-destruct. The soul seed will split into seeds during the explosion and spread through the explosion. Soul refining body. Increases the strength of one's own soul by absorbing the power of souls. After possessing and occupying the target's soul, and taking complete control of the target's strength will increase according to the strength of one's own soul. Dead Soul Ferryman. Emits a deep soul voice that can control the living target's soul. Through powerful soul tremors, the target's soul will be in an unstable state, and increase the soul absorption's effect. Soul Jade Attachment. Erupts the body's soul power in an instant, turning the soul body into jade. When the jade-transformed soul body shatters, there will be a soul attack that surpasses the body's soul strength. At the same time, the shattered soul jade will instantly turn into a soul mist that will rise and infect all living beings in the area, and form a soul seed in all living beings' bodies. Exclusive skill: Frowny Face Dead Soul Immortality. When the body is killed and there is no soul seed to use, the dead soul caterpillar's soul will leave the body and drift in a certain space. When there are enough living beings in this space die, the dead soul caterpillar's floating soul will be revived by infecting the dead soul's power. After looking at the Orchid Petal Blade Centipede, or Dead Soul Caterpillar's true data, Lin Yuan could not help but nod inwardly. After Lu Jie's insect queen had mutated, Lin Yuan had not had the chance to spar with him. However, Lin Yuan had checked the insect queen's true data, and knew that it could use the Blade Queen Bee's spiritual toxin to control other insect species' phase. Previously, Lu Jie was unable to contract phase due to the insect queen's characteristics, causing him to be lacking in versatility in combat. Now that the insect queen had gained control of the Blade Queen Bee's spiritual toxin, Lu Jie was able to break the previous restriction. Right now, the insect queen was like a contractor that could use the Blade Queen Bee's spiritual toxin to contract insect species phase. However, the insect queen's contracted insect species phase total spiritual energy could not surpass the insect queen's. Otherwise, the insect queen would die from the spiritual energy backlash. Under such circumstances, it would not be a problem for Lu Jie to allow the insect queen to contract 8 or 10 insect species phase. As a spiritual type fairy source type life form, the insect queen's spiritual energy was far superior to ordinary phase and source type life forms. However, compared to ordinary insect species phase, insect species carcinoma phase were undoubtedly a better choice for Lu Jie. This was because the majority of carcinoma phase spiritual energy was very chaotic. Even though this dead soul caterpillar's soul was abnormally powerful, its spiritual energy was still inferior to the flesh-mincing blade insects that the insect queen had casually produced. It was also thanks to Lu Jie being the chief guard's disciple. Otherwise, even if Lin Yuan thought that the insect queen would be the best choice to contract insect species carcinoma phase, he would not be able to obtain any. The only carcinoma phase that Lin Yuan had was the sea burial lotus flower, which he had obtained by chance. The spirit guards were very strict in controlling things like carcinoma phase. Lu Jie had always told Lin Yuan about his growth in detail, and had never forgotten his duty as a retainer knight. Lin Yuan knew that Lu Jie now controlled 8 abnormally powerful insect species carcinoma phase. Every insect species carcinoma phase would be able to cause a disaster. The orchid petal blade mantis was controlled by the insect queen's contracted insect species carcinoma phase, the dead soul caterpillar. Earlier on, the orchid petal blade mantis controlled by the dead soul caterpillar had used its normal ability, soul absorption, on Miaozhua. Miaozhua's body was glowing with golden light, and it should be a soul-protecting treasure that the Beast Creation Garden's elders had prepared for Miaozhua. However, under the sudden attack of the Diamond X/Legend Dead Soul Caterpillar, that soul-protecting treasure was not enough to protect Miaozhua. Miaozhua's soul was still injured. Everything happened in a flash, and everyone, including Long Tao, Li Xian and Gao Feng, were stunned by Lu Jie's sudden attack. The first attack was even more shocking. End of this chapter. Chapter 828. No one would have thought that someone would dare to make a move in the outer palace of Yeyang Palace. Not only did this man not care about the Beast Creation Garden behind Miaozhua, but he also did not care that this was Yeyang Palace. Even if Long Tao and Li Xian knew Lin Yuan's identity, it would not be appropriate for Lin Yuan to make a move outside Yeyang Palace. Yeyang Palace was the palace of the Chief Guard, Night Leaning Moon, and it was equivalent to Chief Guard Ye's home. Even if Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple, he would still be disrespecting Chief Guard Yi by making a move in her home. However, this change was not caused by Lin Yuan, but by the man wearing the Spirit Guard's standard mask, who had been following Lin Yuan. Long Tao and Li Xian weren't fools. They looked at each other, and had a faint guess about the identity of the Spirit Guard's masked man beside Lin Yuan. However, others who did not know Lin Yuan's identity did not think so. Chi Haitao, who was already trapped in this storm, began to chatter. He was cursing Lu Jie for being a fool. This matter was already over. Miaozhua had said that he would deal with him after the Nyx assembly. At most he would beat him up. With the experts of the 5 Thearchs mercenary team guarding him outside Yeyang Palace, if Miaozhua wanted to hurt him, the experts would definitely stop him. After all, the Sea of Bliss had taken out a lot of resources to reach a protection agreement with the 5 Thearchs mercenary team. Chi Haitao was already prepared to be beaten up, but he didn't expect a new change to happen in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. Chi Haitao looked at Lu Jie with hatred. He could not help but want to jump up and ask Lu Jie, making a move in the outer palace of Yeyang Palace? Don't you know who you are, and whether you deserve it? Now everyone, including Sun Ning Xiang from Du Congealing Immortal Garden, was destined to suffer. A normal person would have fainted when their soul was injured, but Miaozhua could barely stay awake, because he had a treasure to protect his soul. The pale Miaozhua said in a hoarse voice to the dumbfounded Zheng Kaiyuan, "Cousin, give me a hand." Zheng Kaiyuan came back to his senses, and pulled Miaozhua up from the ground. Zheng Kaiyuan asked the pale-faced Miaozhua in a low voice when he regained his senses. "Cousin, I'll go to the inner palace to find Master." Looking at the injuries on Miaozhua's soul, Zheng Kaiyuan was completely flustered. Zheng Kaiyuan had always been insufferably arrogant in Indigo Azure City, as the second young master of the Zheng family. But in a place like Yeyang Palace's outer palace, any random person would at least be from a veteran faction. Zheng Kaiyuan's arrogance, as the Zheng family's second young master, had long since disappeared. Miaozhua ignored Zheng Kaiyuan and glared at Lu Jie, who was wearing the Spirit Guard's standard mask. Even now, he still couldn't understand. "How dare you suddenly attack me?" Miaozhua's soul was injured, and the pain penetrated deep into his bones. He couldn't understand what was happening. In a place like this where he could no longer tolerate it, he still had to grit his teeth and endure it. Did the other party eat the heart of a bear, or the heart of a leopard? He actually dared to attack directly? Did this person not want to live? He was clearly ready to find a way out of the situation. But why was he still attacked by the other party? Lu Jie stood in front of Lin Yuan, looking like a staunch guard. Since the spirit guard's masks had a voice-changing effect, Lu Jie's voice sounded a little strange. However, this strange voice was extremely firm and stern. At the same time, Lu Jie's words caused everyone present to gasp involuntarily. You shouldn't have pointed your finger at the tip of his nose. If there's a next time, you'll be dead. Miaozhua couldn't react for a moment when he heard Lu Jie's answer. He only felt that Lu Jie's answer was simply too ridiculous. If this had happened outside, even if someone said something bad about him, he would definitely make the offending person pay with his life, let alone someone pointing at his nose. However, the problem was that this was Yeong Palace. After the surrounding veteran factions and top factions' disciples heard Lu Jie's words, many of them could not help but exclaim, "Fuck! This person's words were simply too arrogant." He didn't take Yeong Palace seriously at all. At that moment, two figures appeared behind Miaozhua. One of them asked Lu Jie in a cold voice, "You dare to attacking Yeong Palace? Good job." Even if there are no attendants in Yeong Palace, the left and right governors are still in Yeong Palace presiding over matters. The other figure first checked Miaozhua's injuries and subconsciously wanted to summon a fae to heal Miaozhua's arm. However, when he recalled that this was Yeong Palace, he immediately stopped what he was doing. In Yeong Palace, it was against the rules to summon a fae without permission, even if it was a healing-type fae. When Miaozhua saw the two people walking in front of him, he weakly nodded at them. Zheng Kaiyuan, who was at the side, quickly greeted them. However, only one of them nodded at Zheng Kaiyuan in response, while the other completely ignored Zheng Kaiyuan's existence. Long Tao, who saw the two of them, immediately stood up and said to the man who asked the question, "Du Shua Feng He. It's not easy to meddle in other people's business. Don't get yourself into trouble by meddling in other people's business." Du Shua was a young core disciple of the Hearthstone Metals faction. Among the top 50 factions, the Hearthstone Metals faction was in the top 10, just like the Long family that he was from. They controlled a large number of metals and spiritual ingredients, and the entire faction was abnormally low profile. Feng He was from the four-legged beast region, which might not be comparable to the Long family, but it also had a large number of beast-type fays. In terms of overall strength, it was much stronger than Li Xian's Black Cloud Bird region. He had heard that Du Shua and Feng He had a very good relationship, just like Siamese twins. However, he had never heard of any relationship between Du Shua and Feng He and Miaozhua. Now that Du Shua and Feng He were standing behind Miaozhua, it seemed like the Hearthstone Metals, the four-legged beast region, and the Beast Creation Garden were going to cooperate. In Long Tao's opinion, Du Shua and Feng He were really unlucky. As long as he announced his identity, Du Shua and Feng He were destined to be punished by their elders when they returned to the faction for standing up for Miaozhua. Moreover, the four-legged beast region, the Hearthstone Metals, and the Beast Creation Garden had to consider the impact of this storm. When Du Shua heard Long Tao's words, his face darkened, and he mocked. "Long Tao, you better take care of yourself." After saying that, Du Shua ignored Long Tao and continued to look at Lu Jie. There is a price to pay for being impulsive. You have to consider whether you can afford this price. Lu Jie stepped forward under everyone's gaze and asked Du Shua in a deep voice, "You have to pay a price for being impulsive. Why can't I afford to deal with an unwelcome guest in my own home?" There was a second watch and a third watch later. Sob, 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 sob. End of this chapter. Chapter 829. Lu Jie's words did not cause the slightest ripple at first, but everyone immediately realized what he meant. This man wearing the Spirit Guard's standard mask actually said that Night Independence Palace was his home. This man's identity was obvious. He must be the disciple of the Spirit Guard's chief guard Night Leaning Moon. Presumably, no one in the world would dare to pretend to be Chief Guard Night Leaning Moon's disciple in Night Independence Palace. Although Long Tao and Li Xian had already guessed it, they still could not help but look surprised. They could not help but take a few more glances at Lu Jie. Gao Feng, who was about to ask his father to help Lin Yuan plead with Chief Guard Knight, was so shocked that he could not close his mouth. He did not expect the main character of this night assembly to be by his side, but he did not know at all. Then, Gao Feng looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. Lin Yuan could travel with Chief Guard Knight's disciple, and the disciple even stood up for him. What exactly was his identity? Even if Gao Feng had always been a little insensitive, he now realized that Lin Yuan's identity was probably completely different from what he had imagined. Everyone's gazes, which were originally looking at Lu Jie for fun, changed after he revealed his identity. The veteran factions and the top faction's disciples did not expect that the originally simple-minded person would actually turn into a true dragon. Most of the people present fixed their gazes on Lu Jie. At the same time, they were wondering if they could have a chance to talk to Lu Jie in a while. While some people were surprised, their gazes did not change. However, the target had shifted from Lu Jie to Miao Zhua, Du Shua and Fang He. Miao Zhua had been injured by Chief Guard Knight's disciple for nothing. Moreover, Chief Guard Knight's disciple had called Miao Zhua an unwelcome guest. The term unwelcome guest really made people have wild thoughts. Unwelcome guests naturally had to be chased out. If Miao Zhua was chased out of the night assembly, would it implicate Master Miao Qi, who had led the Miao family's team to participate in the night assembly? Du Shua and Fang He, who had just spoken up for Miao Zhua, suddenly turned pale after knowing Lu Jie's identity. Then, they hurriedly took a big step to the side to stay away from Miao Zhua. The relationship between the Hearthstone Metals and the Four-Legged Beast region was very similar to that between Coiling Dragon Valley and Dawn Cloud Bird region. Hearthstone had been supporting the Four-Legged Beast region all these years, just like how Coiling Dragon Valley had been supporting Blackcloud Niao, Kansas. The relationship between Du Shua and Fang He was very similar to the relationship between Long Tao and Li Xian. However, the relationship between Du Shua and Fang He was much closer than the relationship between Long Tao and Li Xian. This was because Fang He, who was born in the Four-Legged Beast region, had been raised in a Hearthstone since he was young. Fang He had been Du Shua's inseparable playmate since he was young. Du Shua was the main attacker on the contracted Fei, while Fang He followed behind him and silently healed him. The relationship between the two was even closer than that of brothers from ordinary families. When Hearthstone was developing the underground dimensional rift, it had discovered a secret that required a large amount of creation master resources. Hence, he found the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, which also had the intention to work with Hearthstone. However, the benefits involved in the cooperation were too great, and the two sides had yet to reach an agreement. Du Shua and Fang He finally got in touch with Miao Zhua in private when the various top-notch forces gathered in the royal capital. Miao Zhua was not even considered a friend to the two of them. The two of them had helped Miao Zhua because they wanted to use this opportunity to get the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden to make concessions in the future cooperation. Du Shua revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He had just said that impulsiveness would have to pay the price. Now the price had fallen on him. Even retribution would not come so quickly. Du Shua and Fang He, who had been implicated, looked at Miao Zhua with eyes full of disgust. It was a small matter that they had stood up for Miao Zhua, but their words had been very rude to Chief Guard Ye's disciple. Du Shua could not help but subconsciously put his hand on his buttocks when he thought of the strict elders in his family. Du Shua only hoped that his father would not beat up the 2 kilograms of flesh on his buttocks. If that happened, he would have to trouble Fang He to heal him again. At that moment, a sharp pressure swept across the outer palace of Night Inn Palace. Under this pressure, everyone present was like a lonely flame in the cold night. Miao Zhua, whose soul was already injured, could not support his body's weight even with Zheng Kaiyuan's support. He collapsed to the ground. However, this pressure stopped abruptly when it arrived in front of Lu Jie and Lin Yuan. Under this pressure, an ordinary-looking man walked in the outer palace of Night Inn Palace with a gloomy expression. When he saw who it was, Du Shua immediately cursed inwardly. Among the spirit guards, the right guard's temper was obviously better than the left guard's. The left guard had always been managing the spirit guard's sin cleansing pond for Chief Guard Yi. He could be said to be a great demon king of the spirit guards. If the left guard was here to deal with this storm, they would probably be in big trouble. Even the elders in the inner palace might be implicated. The left guard was merciless. It was a small matter if they were thrown out of Night End Palace. If the elders were also thrown out of Night End Palace, it would be a huge loss of face. Even though Du Shua was his father's only son, he could not help but feel that if his father was thrown out of Night End Palace because of him, once he returned home, his father would definitely strangle him to death and produce another person to replace him. Under the impact of this pressure, Miaojua originally thought that he was going to faint. However, this pressure was like magic that tightly gripped onto his soul, allowing his soul to maintain extreme lucidity, even though the pain was multiplied. As a creation master, Miaojua immediately fell into despair. He knew that the left guard was using the power of the law world to shock his soul. If his soul had been injured previously, as long as his aunt was around, she could immediately use spiritual ingredients to heal him. But now that his soul had been shocked by the law world would stimulate the soul and erode a portion of his damaged soul. It was an irreversible damage. Miaojua's eyes immediately turned ashen when his soul was irreversible. He knew that he was destined to never become a Class 4 creation master in this lifetime. If his soul was irreversible, it meant that he would never be able to use his soul force to concoct the spirit fluid. Miaojua, who was now a pinnacle Class 3 creation master, knew that his life was over. The left administrator walked up to Lu Jie and bowed respectfully. When everyone saw the left guard's bow posture, they could not help but feel a little strange. The left guard wasn't standing directly in front of Lu Jie. Instead, he was standing in between Lu Jie and Lin Yuan. From the looks of it, no one could tell if the left guard was bowing to Lu Jie or Lin Yuan. The late third watch, everyone good night. End of this chapter. Chapter 830. Upon seeing this scene, Long Tao and Li Xian's eyes revealed a look of understanding. Sun Ningxiang, who originally had a calm expression after guessing Lu Jie's identity, was now filled with shock and confusion. Just as Sun Ningxiang was pondering, the other veteran factions, and the younger generation of the top factions, were also pondering what was going on. The left palm minister, Zhuo Ming, was a true big shot. Even during the Du Immortal Garden's prime, if their grandfather wanted to visit the left palm minister, Zhuo Ming, he would have to request a month in advance, and the meeting might not be successful. Big shots always cherished their feathers. The man wearing the Spirit Guard standard mask was Chief Guard Ye's disciple, so he was naturally worthy of Zhuo Ming's salute. If Zhuo Ming only wanted to salute Lu Jie, he could just stand in front of Lu Jie. He would never stand between Lu Jie and Lin Yuan like this. In addition, Zhuo Ming was facing Lin Yuan and Lu Jie, so the others could only see the back of Zhuo Ming's head. They could not see Zhuo Ming's face at all. When Zhuo Ming appeared and burst out with a terrifying aura, everyone subconsciously lowered their heads. No one dared to stare at Zhuo Ming's face. However, when Sun Ningxiang saw Zhuo Ming's position, she subconsciously looked up at Zhuo Ming's expression. Sun Ningxiang realized that the left palm minister, Zhuo Ming, had actually nodded at Lin Yuan without a trace. This action meant that Zhuo Ming was not standing in the wrong position at all. He was indeed saluting Lin Yuan. It meant that in Zhuo Ming's heart, Lin Yuan's position was comparable to Chief Guard Ye's disciple. Sun Ningxiang had already determined that Lin Yuan was the youth wearing the strange mask in Sky City through Lin Yuan's build, the curve of his chin, the way he spoke, his temperament, and his voice. Now, Sun Ningxiang knew that Lin Yuan's identity was not as simple as a member of Sky City's private faction. Lin Yuan must have a similar identity as Lu Jie. Sun Ningxiang could not help but think of the inexhaustible creation master resources in Lin Yuan's hands. Suddenly, Sun Ningxiang recalled that the Class 5 creation master, the Moon Empress, had also accepted a disciple, and her disciple was likely to attend the Nyx assembly. With that thought, the mystery in Sun Ningxiang's heart about Sky Castle and Lin Yuan's identity was completely solved. Sun Ningxiang originally thought that the private faction Sky City might have a newly promoted Class 5 creation master overseeing it. Otherwise, it would not be able to increase the quality of phase so quickly. Now Sun Ningxiang understood that she was overthinking. How could it be so easy for a Class 5 creation master to appear in the world? If Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters could break through to Class 5 so easily, the Radiance Federation wouldn't only have 3 Class 5 creation masters, after so many years. Although Sun Ningxiang did not dare to guarantee Lin Yuan's identity, she felt that it was close to the mark. Sun Ningxiang, who was still in shock, suddenly felt that her tense heart had relaxed. It didn't matter if Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple or not. Lin Yuan's identity was there, and even the left palm enforcer, Zhuoming, had to nod and greet Lin Yuan. Now that the Du Immortal Garden and Sky City had a close cooperation, he just had to cling on to Lin Yuan's thigh and continue to develop. The Du Immortal Garden would soon be able to get rid of the Creation Master's lack of resources. However, Sun Ningxiang felt that it was not enough to just cling onto Lin Yuan's thigh. She had to deepen the cooperation between the Du Immortal Garden and Sky City. Even if the Du Immortal Garden had to rely on Sky City to develop, she would not hesitate. Only then would Lin Yuan be able to lend a helping hand to the Du Immortal Garden when it encountered a crisis that it could not resist. For the past few years, Sun Ningxiang felt that it was getting increasingly strenuous to support the Du Immortal Garden alone. This was because the influence of a top-notch faction with depleted creation masters, a lack of high-end combat power, and a lack of top-notch combat power would undoubtedly continue to decline. The Du Immortal Garden's monopoly of some plant phase was getting increasingly strenuous. Otherwise, the Miao family's beast creation institution would not dare to plot against the Du Immortal Garden so brazenly and want to cooperate to slowly annex the Du Immortal Garden. Looking at Lin Yuan's firm and calm expression, Sun Ningxiang felt that she might be able to choose to tie the Du Immortal Garden's future to Lin Yuan. However, before others could think further, the left palm enforcer, Zhuoming, apologized to Lu Jia. Young Palace Lord, Zhuoming didn't expect that there would actually be people who don't know the rules and offend you. These people are participating in the Nix conference to congratulate the young Palace Lord, but they are so rude. Young Palace Lord, please instruct us how to deal with them. While speaking, Zhuoming's eyes did not even look at the pale Miao Zhua, Zheng Kaiyuan, Du Shua, Fang He and Qi Haitao. It was as though the 5 of them were just dust floating on the surface of a shoe, and were not worthy of any attention. They would be fine as long as Lu Jia gave the order to wipe them off. Zhuoming's heart was surging with true anger. As a Radiance 100 sequence member, Lu Jia had previously controlled the Insect Queen to create an Insect Sea and delayed Cold Frost City for 30 minutes. He had only fainted when the spirit guards arrived. It was unknown how many ordinary people and spirit chi professionals he had protected in Cold Frost City. Although it was not the left palm enforcer Zhuoming who had led the team to support Cold Frost City, through this incident, Zhuoming rather admired Lu Jia. Even the guard envoys of the spirit guards could not be like Lu Jia in the face of a disaster, and still use their bodies to defend despite knowing that they were no match for the enemy. Afterward, when Zhuoming found out that the chief guard had accepted a disciple, and that the disciple was Lu Jia, he immediately recognized him as his young master. After getting along for this period of time, Zhuoming had completely treated Lu Jia as his junior. Zhuoming believed that he understood Lu Jia's character very well, and that Lu Jia's temper was very good. It was not easy to make Lu Jia angry. Before the start of the Nix assembly, Zhuoming was in charge of the outer palace, while the right palm enforcer was in charge of the inner palace. Zhuoming had only sent Chef Supreme's little disciple, Zhongzhe, and Bamboo Monarch's little disciple, Gu Lang, to the Night Language Pavilion, but someone in the outer palace had taken advantage of his absence to anger Lu Jia. Damn it! The first batch of sin-cleansing weeping willows had been nurtured in the sin-cleansing pond, but they had yet to be bathed in blood. Zhuoming felt that this new batch of sin-cleansing weeping willows should be able to make these people who had broken the rules of Night Glory Palace and offended the young palace lord be punished and taught a lesson. Du Shua held Fang He's hand and hung his head. He felt that his stubbornness had delayed Fang He. Otherwise, with Fang He's aloof personality, he would not have meddled in Miao Zhua's business. If it was the right palm enforcer who had come to settle this dispute, Du Shua might have dared to step forward and argue. However, in front of the left palm enforcer, if he dared to step forward and say a word of nonsense, it might lead to even more serious consequences. At that moment, Du Shua heard Lu Jie speak. The first time was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 831. Lu Jie's words caused Du Shua's drooping head to suddenly lift up in despair. Uncle Zhua, it's not as serious as you said. I just don't want the person lying on the ground to appear in the next assembly again. Lu Jie had never been an aggressive person. Even though Du Shua had just talked back to him, he didn't take it to heart. However, he could not tolerate anyone who dared to reach out and insult him by pointing at the tip of his nose. This was not only an insult to Lu Jie's mission as a retainer knight, but it was also a trampling on Lu Jie's faith. Lu Jie would risk his life to protect Lin Yuan's dignity, mission and faith, no matter when, where or what identity he had. Lu Jie naturally knew what would happen to Miao Zhua if Zhou Ming threw him out of the Nightfall Palace, since he had been rescued by Lin Yuan. However, Lu Jie still did not intend to let Miao Zhua go. This was Lu Jie's insistence. Zhou Ming was already furious. Before Lu Jie answered, he had already decided to use the newly cultivated weeping willow to cleanse his sins, to make those who offended Lu Jie pay the price. However, Zhou Ming paused when he heard Lu Jie's words. After pausing for a long while, Zhou Ming revealed a relieved smile. He was a person who was willing to stand up in the face of a great disaster. Why would he care about a few offending words in others' words? Even though Lu Jie's current status was extremely precious, his original intention hadn't changed in the slightest. This was Lu Jie's rare quality, so Zhou Ming naturally would not raise any other opinions. In that case, we'll do as you say, young palace master. Then, Zhou Ming's sharp eyes swept over Du Shua, Fang He, Qi Haitao, Zheng Kaiyuan, and the disciples of the top and veteran factions standing nearby. Young palace master is very kind. Otherwise, you deserve to reflect for a day under the weeping willow, to cleanse your sins. Nightfall Palace has never allowed outsiders to set foot in it. It is a great joy to have the young palace master, which is why this next assembly was held. Don't forget the rules your elders taught you in the outer palace. If your cautious elders in the inner palace find out that you offended the young palace master in the outer palace, I won't punish you. Your elders will automatically send you to the pond to cleanse your sins. Zhou Ming's words sent chills down everyone's spines. The Pekin veteran forces that stood slightly closer to Miao Zhua were also shocked. He was innocent. He stood a little closer, just to make it easier for him to eat the melon. But looking at the eyes of the left minister, Zhou Ming, it seemed like they were all participants in this storm. However, based on their understanding of Zhou Ming from the rumors, it was possible that Zhou Ming would be treated as Miao Zhua's accomplice, just because they were standing too close to him. Everyone who hadn't participated in the commotion looked at Lu Jie with respect and gratitude in their eyes. At the same time, he looked at Miao Zhua, who had collapsed on the ground, with eyes filled with disgust and hatred. At this moment, countless people were cursing Miao Zhua in their hearts. It's because of you. I was almost locked in the pond to wash my sins. After a night of repentance under the weeping willow tree, even if he was still alive when he came out, it would take him 5 years to recover. 5 years was too precious for the people present. Not all the Pekin veteran forces were like the Gao family, the Long family, and the Blissful Ocean tribe. Most of the younger generation of the Pekin veteran forces were not as prosperous as the Li family, Li Yin and Niao Kansas. It was normal for them to have 5 or 6 direct descendants of the younger generation. The younger generation that could be brought to the next assembly by their elders could be said to be the most doted on in the forces. However, if they were punished by the left minister, their status in the forces would definitely plummet. Moreover, if they were to spend 5 years recuperating after coming out of the pond, it would be too late. Du Shua held Fang He's hand tightly. After Fang He gave him a signal, the two of them bowed to Lu Jie and said, "Thank you, young palace master, for your magnanimity." Du Shua and Fang He's words were like a fuse. After Du Shuo and Feng He's voices sounded, everyone present said, "Thank you, young palace master, for your magnanimity." When the left minister, Ming, arrived, he had heard Du Shuo's conflict with Lu Jia. Even if Lu Jia said that he would not punish Du Shuo, Ming planned to teach Du Shuo a lesson in the future. Now that Du Shuo was so tactful, Ming gave up on finding trouble with the Du family's hearthstone. Lu Jia felt the fervent gazes on him. When he heard everyone say, "Thank you, young palace master, for your magnanimity," he did not have the slightest reaction. However, he said, "The person on the ground is an example. The person on the ground is an example. I don't want anyone to point at Lin Yuan's nose in the future." Lu Jia's words once again drew everyone's attention back to Lin Yuan. When they recalled Zhuo Ming's bow, everyone could not help but guess Lin Yuan's identity again. The left minister, Zhuo Ming, reached out his hand, and the spirit force in his palm surged. Miao Zhuo was like a rag doll as Zhuo Ming grabbed his head and pulled him up from the ground. Then, Zhuo Ming's figure flashed and disappeared from the Yeyang Palace's outer palace. He arrived at a giant snake-shaped beast head in the beast head garden outside the Yeyang Palace. After Zhuo Ming arrived, the giant snake-shaped beast head suddenly came to life and transformed into a giant python that was about 8 meters long. Zhuo Ming said to the giant python, "Old Steel, this kid talked back to the young palace master." "Old Gang, this kid talked back to the young palace lord. Help me bring him to the pond of sins first. Later, let the Miao family's beast creation garden come to collect him." After hearing Zhuo Ming's words, the python, who was called Old Steel, suddenly had a fierce look in its eyes. Then, all the beast heads in the entire beast head garden seemed to have the tendency to transform. Old Steel's hoarse voice sounded. "Someone actually talked back to the young palace master with such a good temper, and it was in our Yeyang Palace's territory. It seems like the Miao family has a third emperor-class expert this year. It seems like the beast creation garden is getting more and more arrogant." The left minister, Zhuo Ming, originally had a cold look on his face, but after hearing Old Steel's words, he could not help but roll his eyes. "Old Steel, don't be so dramatic. Even if the Miao family has 100 emperor-class experts, Old Miao would not dare to disrespect our chief guard. This time, the Miao family's leader is Miao Qi. I wonder if Miao Qi is really infatuated, or if the Miao family still has such intentions. Lord Bamboo Monarch is still so bad at rejecting women. I heard from Yuzha that the person in the elegant jade pavilion, who originally did not intend to come to the Great Night Assembly, sent a message. He said that he accepted the Great Night Assembly's invitation and has now arrived at the inner palace. There were 2 more to come. End of this chapter. Chapter 832. Old Steel's mind was obviously not on Zhuo Ming's words, and he looked at Zhuo Ming speechlessly. He did not understand why the serious Zhuo Ming was always so gossipy in front of his old buddy. Old Steel did not go to receive Zhuo Ming. If that person from the elegant pavilion really came, it would be a huge matter. It was the same as saying that the Bamboo Monarch's backyard was on fire. Even if such a matter happened in the Night Emperor Palace, unless the chief guard personally took care of it, it would be inconvenient for them to intervene. Given the chief guard's character and temper, she would definitely be too lazy to care about such matters. Old Steel's snake eyes glanced at the unconscious Miao Zhuo and said to Zhuo Ming, "Summon the soul sound lyrebird and search this kid's soul. Summon the soul note lyrebird and search this kid's soul. See how this kid offended the young palace master. At the sin cleansing pond, this kid's soul will wake up no matter how severely injured it is, and accept the whipping of the sin cleansing weeping willow. I have decided to use a few sin cleansing weeping willows to teach this kid a lesson." Zhuo Ming looked at Old Steel helplessly. He should have just asked directly. Why did he say to use a few sin cleansing weeping willows to teach Miao Zhuo a lesson? Given Miao Zhuo's current soul injuries, he would definitely not be able to last 2 days under a sin cleansing weeping willow. But to be honest, Zhuo Ming was also very curious why the good-tempered Lu Jia would be so angry. Zhuo Ming waved his hand and summoned an avian fei with lute-like tail feathers. This avian fei had dozens of crystallized feathers of different colors. The bird's body was ordinary, and the pure white feathers did not have any halo. However, dozens of crystallized feathers of different colors were all decorating the huge lute-like tail feathers behind the bird's body. It made the lute-like tail feathers look like a lute inlaid with dozens of colored gems. After Zhuoming summoned the soul sound lyrebird, it flicked the feathers on its tail feathers, and the lute-like tail feathers played an obscure and harsh zither sound. After the zither sound echoed, Miaozhua revealed an extremely painful expression. Zhuoming had already used the zither sound to search Miaozhua's soul, and knew what had happened. In the spirit guards, only Night Leaning Moon knew that Lu Jie was Lin Yuan's retainer knight. Although Night Leaning Moon did not conceal Lu Jie's identity as Lin Yuan's retainer knight, she did not deliberately tell Zhuoming that Lu Jie was Lin Yuan's retainer knight. Thus, Zhuoming was a little puzzled, and did not understand why Lu Jie was so protective of Lin Yuan. It could be said that Lu Jie had attacked in anger, because Miaozhua had offended Lin Yuan. Zhuoming's body was drenched in cold sweat. Fortunately, Cold Moon and Black Moon had followed the Moon Empress to the core region of Night Dawn Palace for a meeting. Otherwise, if Zhang Yu and Xian Yu found out that their little highness had been offended, Miaozhua's fate would definitely be 10 times worse than it was now. Even the normal progress of the Nyx assembly would be affected, since Miaozhua had not only offended the young palace master, but also the Radiant Moon Palace's little highness. Zhuoming said to Old Gang, "Old Gang, you don't have to send Miaozhua to the pond. Just send him back to the Miao family's old mansion in Beast Creation Garden. Tell old Miao that his grandson is in this state, because our young palace master took the initiative. The reason is that his grandson offended the Radiant Moon Palace's little highness. As for how to deal with it, let old Miao decide for himself." Old Gang was a little surprised. He did not expect the kid on the ground to be involved with the Radiant Moon Palace. This was like poking a huge hornet's nest. The huge python swallowed Miaozhua, who was lying on the ground, and disappeared in a flash. At this time, the right minister of the Night Palace, Yu Zhe, was sweating from time to time. No matter how powerful a dimensional creature was, no matter how many dimensional creatures surrounded it, Jingyo Yu had never felt such emotions. It was because Yu Zhe did not know how to deal with the current situation, and did not dare to deal with it casually. The real bigwigs were all holding a meeting in the core region of Night Dawn Palace. The people in the inner palace were the leaders of the various top factions and veteran factions. Yu Zhe, who had won the rock-paper-scissors contest with Zhuoming, thought that he had chosen an easy job. However, he did not expect that the person in the elegant pavilion, who had refused to participate in the Nyx assembly, had decided to participate again. At this moment, a woman dressed in a luxurious purple robe, which was embroidered with a purple golden bamboo base and golden yellow peonies, was standing at the entrance of the inner palace of Yiyang Palace. The woman had a delicate and pretty face, and when matched with the 2 pearl earrings on her ears, it was as if the entire world was frozen in place. The pearl necklace around her neck seemed to be full of dreamy colors, showing her peerless beauty. It was this woman's appearance that made Yu Zhe's forehead sweat. The moment this peerless beauty appeared, she immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. Previously, Wang Fuxiang was just the mysterious elegant pavilion master to the veteran factions. Only a few top factions knew about the secret between Wang Fuxiang and Lord Bamboo Monarch. However, ever since Lord Bamboo Monarch was infected with bad luck, and no longer helped the top factions refine law crystals, the secret between Wang Fuxiang and Lord Bamboo Monarch spread. Even among the veteran factions, everyone knew about it. After the secret spread, even the current family heads of the top factions did not dare to underestimate Wang Fuxiang in the slightest. Whether it was true or not, the current family heads of the top factions all wore a respectful expression on their faces. At that moment, the heads of the top factions who knew about the secret between Wang Fuxiang and Lord Bamboo Monarch could not help but look at Miao Qi, who was also wearing a purple dress. Her dress was embroidered with 2 red trees. The trees were full of red fruits, and the red fruits were decorated with a few bamboo shadows on the sides of Miao Qi's body. The heads of the top factions were excited. Would anything good happen when Wang Fuxiang and Miao Qi met? They did not expect that one day they would be able to publicly take advantage of Lord Bamboo Monarch. Long Tu, who was sitting with Li Yun Niaocan's current family head, Li Jun, looked at the time. The meeting in the core area of Night Dawn Palace should be over by now. When Lord Bamboo Monarch appeared and saw Wang Fuxiang and Miao Qi, he wondered what kind of expression he would have. However, the matter between Wang Fuxiang and Miao Qi was ultimately Lord Bamboo Monarch's family matter. How it would be resolved would depend on Lord Bamboo Monarch himself. At that moment, a woman pulled a middle-aged man from his seat and walked past the crowd toward Wang Fuxiang. When the woman saw the man absent-mindedly eating a piece of jade dew date flour pastry, she could not help but pull the middle-aged man's ear. Li Zhonglin, all you know is to eat. Wherever you go, you'll eat. Quick, come with me to say hello to Big Sister Xiang. The second was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 833. The middle-aged man called Li Zhonglin hurriedly stuffed the jujube cake into his mouth. He allowed the woman to pull his ear as he tried to curry favor with her. Ying, didn't you say that the jujube cake tasted good? I want to try the recipe so that I can make it for you when we get home. The middle-aged man, Li Zhonglin, pretended to be wronged and winked at the woman twice. The woman did not fall for his trick and said fiercely, "That's how you tricked me back then. If you hadn't winked at me, I wouldn't have left home with you for 20 years. Don't give me that. Let's go." The woman's words to Li Zhonglin were overheard by a shrewd-looking fatty behind her. The fatty thought to himself, "I'm the smart one. Eldest senior brother and junior sister being together is not something to be proud of. It's not as comfortable as opening the Spirit Food Pavilion and cooking. Women are the scariest things. I'd rather use a big pot to make me happy." After hearing his wife's words, Li Zhonglin could not help but pout. How could that be the same? He had only blinked twice now. 20 years ago he was still pouting. However, when he heard that his wife was going to chat with Wang Fuxiang, and even addressed her as Sister Xiang, Li Zhonglin felt a little awkward. After all, Wang Fuxiang was at least 70 years old. Although his wife was older, she was not even 40. It was more appropriate to address her as Aunt Xiang. However, when he arrived in front of Wang Fuxiang, Li Zhonglin still obediently addressed her as Sister Xiang. At the same time, he could not help but think that if he addressed her as Aunt Xiang, he would probably get beaten up. However, now that Sister Xiang had addressed him as Bamboo Monarch, he felt like he was on the same level as her. Hee, this feeling is quite good. With this thought, Li Zhonglin immediately addressed Wang Fuxiang as Sister Xiang. Seeing this, Zhang Yingying immediately knew that Li Zhonglin was sick again. She quickly pinched Li Zhonglin's waist. Zhang Yingying had heard from her father that Bamboo Monarch had always been pursuing Wang Fuxiang. If not for Wang Fuxiang's special circumstances, she would have long become the mistress of Purple Bamboo Forest. Before Zhang Yingying left home with Li Zhonglin, she was the little princess of the fragrant kitchen pavilion. She often went to the elegant jade pavilion to buy jewelry. 20 years ago, when Zhang Yingying was still a young girl, she had already known Wang Fuxiang. If not for Wang Fuxiang's guidance, Zhang Yingying might not have eloped with Li Zhonglin. It could be said that Wang Fuxiang was the matchmaker between him and Li Zhonglin. However, Zhang Yingying had never told Li Zhonglin about this. Even Wang Fuxiang herself had no idea that her words would have such a huge impact on Zhang Yingying. Zhang Yingying greeted Wang Fuxiang warmly. When Wang Fuxiang saw Zhang Yingying, her originally calm face broke into a bright smile. Her smile was full of charm, as if a peach blossom had blown into the inner palace of Yiyang Palace in early spring. Looking at Zhang Yingying, Wang Fuxiang couldn't help but reveal a look of nostalgia. However, Wang Fuxiang's expression darkened as she spoke to Zhang Yingying. "Little sister Ying, I'll go and settle some other matters first. I'll catch up with you later." After speaking, Wang Fuxiang walked over to Miao Qi, who was forcing himself to remain calm. No one knew better than Miao Qi about the relationship between Wang Fuxiang and the Bamboo Monarch. It was precisely because of this that Miao Qi, who was a pinnacle Class 4 creation master, was so flustered. However, when he thought about Wang Fuxiang's misfortune physique, and how the bamboo monarch was affected by it, Miao Qi's expression immediately calmed down. Wang Fuxiang walked with graceful steps, and her purple dress swayed. It was as if yellow peonies were sprinkled on the embroidered bamboo forest on her purple dress. Wang Fuxiang walked in front of Miao Qi and stared at him, causing Miao Qi to feel a little guilty. Regardless of the reason, Miao Qi was morally inferior to Wang Fuxiang. In terms of status, Miao Qi's strength as a Class 4 creation master, and his status as a member of the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, could not be compared to Wang Fuxiang. It wasn't because Wang Fuxiang's elegant pavilion had a lot of resources. In terms of resources, the Miao family, which had a large number of creation masters, could suppress the elegant pavilion. What Miao Qi was afraid of was the fact that Wang Fuxiang had the bamboo monarch's admiration. With the bamboo monarch's admiration, Wang Fuxiang was an existence that Miao Qi could not easily shake. It was also the reason why Wang Fuxiang could win everyone's respect. Therefore, the only thing Miao Qi could do was to gain the upper hand by making a show of strength and pointing at Wang Fuxiang's sore spot. Lord Bamboo Monarch is entangled by the aura of misfortune because of you. He can't even refine law crystals. Do you know that? Miao Qi's words caused everyone's expression to change. Indeed, because of Wang Fuxiang, many of the top factions that had made reservations with the Bamboo Monarch for law crystals had been rejected. Before the crowd could think any further, they heard a flirtatious yet solemn voice. Fu Wenju is indeed affected by me. He is entangled by the power of misfortune that I am born with. You are right. Miao Qi was delighted to hear Wang Fuxiang admit it. Just as he was about to continue poking at Wang Fuxiang's sore spot, Wang Fuxiang continued. But no matter what, I am still a member of the Radiance sect. If Fu Wenju really becomes a Class 5 creation master in name only because of my misfortune, then I will just die. Once I die, Fu Wenju's misfortune will naturally dissipate. Upon hearing Wang Fuxiang's words, the top faction leaders who originally had a bad opinion of her looked at her in shock. They did not expect the charming Wang Fuxiang to be such a staunch woman. She actually said that she would use her death to get rid of the Bamboo Monarch's misfortune. Fu Wenju was the Bamboo Monarch's name. Even Chef Supreme's daughter, Zhang Yingying, would not be impolite to call the Bamboo Monarch by his name. Wang Fuxiang was willing to die for the Bamboo Monarch because she respected him. This meant that the relationship between Wang Fuxiang and the Bamboo Monarch had reached a certain level. Miao Qi did not expect Wang Fuxiang to refute his words in such a way. If it was someone else, Miao Qi would have sneered and said, "Who doesn't know how to die?" But not everyone dares to do it. However, Miao Qi did not dare to say it out loud. If Wang Fuxiang really died after he said that, the Bamboo Monarch would not let him off in his rage. If Wang Fuxiang really died after he said that, the Bamboo Monarch would not let him off in his rage. He would not let go of the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, which had invited him to attend the Nix assembly. Just as Miao Qi was thinking about how to make things difficult for Wang Fuxiang spoke. The assembly has its own rules. As someone from a top faction, you should be aware of them, right? Chapter 3 Sad Face. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 834. As she spoke, Wang Fuxiang swept her gaze across the crowd before speaking once more. The Night Palace's rule for this Nix assembly is that no one's clothes or accessories are allowed to have snake-shaped or snake-like patterns. This is a special rule of the Nix assembly, and everyone has to abide by it. However, apart from the Nix assembly's special rules, have you forgotten about the other assembly's rules? Upon hearing that, Miao Qi's expression suddenly changed. At that moment, an elegant middle-aged man took a deep breath, walked through the crowd, and bowed before Wang Fuxiang. "Greetings, mistress." When Xia Chun saw Wang Fuxiang, he originally did not intend to come forward to greet her. His master, Bamboo Monarch, had always been pursuing Wang Fuxiang, and as his eldest disciple, Xia Chun naturally knew about it. However, as Bamboo Monarch's disciple, Bamboo Monarch had been infected with misfortune because of Wang Fuxiang. Xia Chun, who was like a father to Bamboo Monarch, naturally did not like Wang Fuxiang. Moreover, Wang Fuxiang had always rejected her master, the bamboo monarch. She had never accepted his advances. Therefore, if Xia Chen had come forward to address Wang Fuxiang as mistress, and been rejected by her, it would not only be embarrassing for him. At the same time, it would also be embarrassing for his master. However, the current situation made Xia Chen, who knew his master's intentions, stand out no matter what. It was also considered fulfilling his duty as a disciple. Xia Chen's words caused an uproar. Even Long Tu and Li Zhen's faces revealed shocked expressions. As Bamboo Monarch's eldest disciple, Xia Chen had always been calm and helped Bamboo Monarch manage the Purple Bamboo Forest's matters. At that moment, Xia Chen's words were equivalent to stamping Wang Fuxiang's seal. His words were undoubtedly declaring Wang Fuxiang's status as the Purple Bamboo Forest's mistress. Xia Chen's appearance made Miao Qi, who already had an ugly expression, immediately turn pale. After Xia Chen greeted Wang Fuxiang as mistress, he did not wait for her to react. Instead, he directly continued what Wang Fuxiang had originally said. The Radiance Federation has a total of 18 sets of regalia. 13 of them belong to the 13 majesties who are seated in the imperial court, while the remaining 5 belong to the current generation's 5 Radiance envoys. Every royal robe has a special royal pattern that represents the royal robe. The royal pattern represents the identity and authority of His Majesty. For example, Chief Guard Ye's Yi Che crown is inscribed with the Yi Che crown pattern that represents the eternal silent night. I believe that everyone here knows this. Because of this, as long as it's a gathering similar to the Great Nix Assembly, no one's spiritual energy clothing will have a pattern similar to Yi Che's coronet. At the same time, in order to show their respect for Lord Chief Guard Yi, no one dares to imitate the Night Mist 100 Beasts pattern on Yi Che's royal mark. They can all avoid it. With every word Xia Chen said, Miao Qi's face turned paler. All the leaders of the top forces and veteran forces were shocked. Everyone knew why Xia Chen had brought this up. At first, they had thought that Xia Chen had only stepped forward to seal Wang Fuxiang's identity. She did not expect that after Xia Chen helped Wang Fuxiang become the mistress of the Purple Bamboo Forest, he would help Wang Fuxiang suppress Miao Qi. This level of suppression would directly accuse Miao Qi of being disrespectful to the coronet pattern. After saying this, Xia Chen sneaked a glance at Wang Fuxiang's expression. When he saw that she did not dare to object when he called her mistress, he relaxed and continued. Master, the Bamboo Monarch's crown robe is a bamboo crown robe, and the crown pattern is a purple bamboo crown pattern. Miao Qi, the 2 wolfberry trees on your purple spirit energy clothing are embroidered with the shadow of the purple bamboo. When he said this, Xia Chen felt that he had helped Wang Fuxiang set the stage, so he took a step back and stood behind her. In everyone's eyes, Xia Chen's attitude completely showed that he was treating Wang Fuxiang like a senior. Otherwise, as the Bamboo Monarch's eldest disciple and the general manager of Purple Bamboo Garden, Xia Chen would not have to put on such a respectful attitude in front of Wang Fuxiang. Wang Fuxiang's scalp went numb when she heard Xia Chen call her mistress, but Xia Chen's actions undoubtedly made her feel very comfortable. When Wang Fuxiang decided to attend the Great Nix Assembly, she had already thought about her relationship with the Bamboo Monarch. This time, Wang Fuxiang was prepared to face the relationship between her and the Bamboo Monarch. She was already in her 70s or 80s, and was no longer a young girl in her budding years. It was truly rare to have a relationship. The Bamboo Monarch had also said that he would try his best to get rid of the bad luck on her. Presumably, the Bamboo Monarch had already raised this issue with the other majesties during the Great Nix Assembly and sought a solution. Wang Fuxiang's thoughts were very clear. If there was no way to get rid of the bad luck on her, she would first live a good life with the Bamboo Monarch for a few days. Then, she would wear her favorite jewelry and die in the Bamboo Monarch's arms. Since she had died for the Bamboo Monarch, the Bamboo Monarch would remember her for the rest of his life. Now that the knot in her heart had been untied, Wang Fuxiang had already accepted Xia Chen's title of mistress. Looking at the pale Miao Qi, Wang Fuxiang smiled beautifully, forming a sharp contrast with Miao Qi's wretched expression. This concubine's clothes were personally gifted to me by Fu Wenju. The large patch of purple bamboo embroidery, beneath the yellow peony pattern, was embroidered using golden threads, extracted from the branches of the golden silk emperor bamboo. The purple bamboo embroidery on Fu Wenju's robe was made from the same stock of golden silk emperor bamboo. Miao Qi, the bamboo shadows embroidered behind the 2 red apricot trees on your clothes are truly thoughtful. The golden threads extracted from the golden silk emperor bamboo were also used. You must have spent a lot of money to make this robe. You actually managed to find a myth-breed golden silk emperor bamboo and extract the threads from its branches. The purple bamboo pattern embroidered using the threads extracted from the golden silk emperor bamboo is somewhat similar to the purple bamboo's crown pattern. I wonder if Fu Wenju allowed you to use the golden threads from the golden silk emperor bamboo to imitate the purple bamboo's crown pattern? Or are you, Miao Qi, so disrespectful of the crown pattern? You can imitate the crown pattern on your clothes to participate in the assembly. Miao Qi lowered his head and did not speak for a long time. At this moment, Miao Qi could be said to have lost all his face. Miao Qi was a Class 4 creation master and came from a top-notch faction, the Beast Creation Garden. Even among the top-notch factions, he was a respected existence. Even the current family, head of a veteran faction, had to look up to him. But now, he had become a joke in everyone's eyes. Miao Qi had never expected that Wang Fuxiang would attend the Nix assembly. It could be said that Miao Qi would represent the Miao family to attend the Nix assembly. The Miao family had only made this decision after finding out that Wang Fuxiang had rejected the Nix assembly's invitation. Miao Qi knew that if Wang Fuxiang had not been present, Xia Chen would not have bothered with him. The first was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 835. Miao Qi didn't know what to say. Miao Qi didn't dare to admit to a crime like disrespecting the crown pattern. He had indeed spent a lot of effort and resources on the spirit Qi clothing he wore to attend the Great Night Assembly. These efforts and resources were meant to make him look more respectable. But he didn't expect it to become a weakness in the hands of others. Seeing that the meeting in the core area was about to end, the Right Minister, Yu Zhe, who was in charge of the inner palace, hurriedly walked forward and bowed to Wang Fuxiang. Sir, the meeting in the core area is about to end. Miao Qi disrespected the crown pattern and broke the rules of the Great Night Assembly. In order to not delay the Great Night Assembly, I will chase Miao Qi out. I will also inform the current family head of the Miao family of the whole story, and let him give you an explanation. Even if Yu Zhe knew the secret between Wang Fuxiang and Bamboo Monarch, he didn't have to address her as Sir. However, after Xia Chen stamped Wang Fuxiang, even if Bamboo Monarch didn't personally confirm Wang Fuxiang's identity, he still had to address her as Sir. In Yu Zhe's opinion, Miao Qi deserved what happened to him. This incident was destined to reach Bamboo Monarch's ears. Miao Qi's previous pursuits, and the hints from the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, had already annoyed him. This time, Miao Qi had offended Wang Fuxiang. Even if Bamboo Monarch was usually gentle, his anger would still reach the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden. Wang Fuxiang wasn't an unreasonable person. She had her reasons for making things difficult for Miao Qi. Wang Fuxiang naturally wouldn't make things difficult for Yu Zhe, who was in charge of the inner palace of the Great Night Assembly. She didn't want to disrupt the Great Night Assembly either. Thus Wang Fuxiang spoke. Then I will have to trouble you, Right Minister. With that, Wang Fuxiang turned and walked in Zhang Yingying's direction, ready to catch up with her. Xia Chen followed behind Wang Fuxiang. At this moment, Li Zhonglin and Xia Chen's eyes met. Li Zhonglin winked at Xia Chen casually, and Xia Chen's face immediately flushed red. Xia Chen suppressed the anger in his heart. That damned Li Zhonglin. Even though he wasn't a child, he was still so annoying in his middle age. Xia Chen turned his head, and no longer looked at Li Zhonglin. As soon as Xia Chen saw Li Zhonglin, he couldn't help but think about how Li Zhonglin had shaved himself until he was bald when he was 10 years old, and then made him use his spiritual energy to fry eggs on his head. Not only did the damn Li Zhonglin do this, But he also complained that the spiritual energy in his body was too weak after frying the eggs, so the fried eggs were like sugar hearts and not tasty. This was simply going too far. Miao Qi was a pinnacle class 4 creation master, after all, so Yuzha didn't use force on him. Miao Qi followed Yuzha out of Yiyang Palace, through a special passage. During this period, Miao Qi tried to talk to Yuzha several times, but Yuzha had no intention of responding to Miao Qi at all. Miao Qi thought to himself, now that he had been asked to leave the Nix assembly, he would definitely be punished when he returned to the clan. He could only hope that Miao Zhuo would live up to his expectations and get into the top 3 in the theory arena. This was also a display of the glory of the Beast Creation Garden. Miao Qi recalled that he had specially instructed Miao Zhuo, and felt that it shouldn't be difficult for Miao Zhuo to get into the top 3 in the theory arena if he used the things he had prepared. The Nix Assembly's focus was on the martial arena and the civil and martial arena. Normally, Spirit Qi professionals who were creation masters would have extraordinary combat strength. Therefore, as long as there was a chance, most of them would choose to showcase themselves in the civil and martial arena. As for those who didn't have the strength of a creation master, but had formidable combat strength, they could only participate in the martial arena. This made the civil arena the weakest among the 3 types of arenas. Miao Zhuo was now a pinnacle class 3 creation master, and with the artifact that his father had given him to protect his soul, he could even use his soul to stir the spirit fluid for a short period of time when he was fully spirited. At the thought of this, Miao Qi's face immediately revealed a gratified smile. After the left palm marshal, Swimming, grabbed the unconscious Miao Zhuo and left Yiyang Palace, Gao Feng subconsciously used his hand to pat on Lin Yuan's shoulder. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Lin Yuan, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you tell your brother about your identity?" Gao Feng's action made everyone's eyelids, including Long Tao, Li Xian, and Lu Jia, twitch. If someone else had patted Lin Yuan's shoulder, Lu Jia would have made a move again. However, Lu Jia knew of Gao Feng's relationship with Lin Yuan. Whenever Gao Feng was with Lin Yuan, he would often pat Lin Yuan's shoulder with a p sound. Lin Yuan looked at Gao Feng's reaction and laughed heartily. "You didn't ask either, did you?" Lin Yuan liked Gao Feng's true nature very much. He would say whatever he wanted to say without any pretense. Even when Gao Feng forced Lin Yuan to chat on the phone, Lin Yuan would listen to Gao Feng's complaints about faction development and trivial matters in life with a helpless expression. Gao Feng's frankness would also not make him feel bored. But to be honest, Lin Yuan didn't intend to reveal his identity to Gao Feng at first. However, Gao Feng also didn't take the initiative to ask. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Gao Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes and look at Lin Yuan with an expression that said, "I want to know now. Hurry up and tell me." Lin Yuan looked around and pointed at an empty area in a corner not far away. "Why don't we sit over there and talk? We can also eat something." When Lin Yuan and Lu Jia arrived, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Lin Yuan and Lu Jia didn't have time for dinner. Lin Yuan was a little hungry now. In a while, Lu Jia would have to participate in the martial duels, and Lin Yuan would also have to participate in the civil and martial duels. They were bound to experience a fierce battle, so they naturally couldn't go hungry. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Long Tao, Li Xian, Lu Jia, Gao Feng, and Lin Yuan walked toward the corner together. Everyone around wanted to come forward and join the small group that Lin Yuan and Lu Jia were in, but they didn't dare to rashly go forward. Everyone present had seen Miao Zhuo's outcome in the conflict just now. If they rashly went forward and angered the noble, they might very well be thrown out like Miao Zhuo. At that moment, Sun Ningxiang took a few steps forward and walked to Lin Yuan's side. She put her face close to Lin Yuan's ear and asked softly, "I didn't expect the Moon Empress disciple to be a member of the private faction Sky City." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. When he saw the affirmative look in Sun Ningxiang's eyes, he immediately denied it, but didn't directly admit his identity. Instead, he invited Sun Ningxiang. "Why don't you sit over there with the 5 of us?" Upon hearing that, Sun Ningxiang's eyes lit up. At that moment in the outer palace, the small group of Lin Yuan, Lu Jie, Long Tao, Li Xian, and Gao Feng could be said to be the most valuable group. The second night watch, and there was another night watch later. End of this chapter. Chapter 836. Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress' disciple, and Lu Jie was Chief Guard Ye's disciple. Two of Her Holiness disciples, the only direct descendants of two top factions, the destined family head candidates, and Li Xian, the highly regarded eldest young master in the Dawn Cloud Bird niche. In such a group, as long as he casually negotiated some cooperation with anyone, it would be equivalent to a great opportunity for the Dew Immortal Garden. He might even be able to exchange for treasures that could help his grandmother's injuries improve, or even recover from her injuries. Along the way to the corner area, Gao Feng already knew Lin Yuan's identity through Li Xian and Long Tao's guidance. However, the way Gao Feng looked at Lin Yuan did not change. He just felt that this world was a little mysterious. It turned out that his brother was actually so powerful. However, Gao Feng immediately understood why Lin Yuan could so easily take out Bronze/Epic Phase and the insect pattern Coral Jade, which was something that only Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Masters could nurture. After they chatted for a while, Lu Jie, who was wearing the Spirit Guard standard mask, got to know Long Tao, Gao Feng, and Li Xian, whom he had heard of, due to his relationship with Lin Yuan. This feeling of getting to know the same people with different identities was really quite wonderful. Thinking about Lin Yuan's 3 identities that could be split at will, Lu Jie seemed to suddenly find Lin Yuan's interest. Sun Ningxiang was not bashful in the small group of 5, and quickly joined in the idle chatter of the 5. She reached a cooperation with Li Xian and Long Tao. The Dawn Cloud Bird niche nurtured Flying Species Phase, while the Coiling Dragon Valley nurtured Dragon Species Phase. They had a great demand for plant phase as fodder and spiritual ingredients. Being able to cooperate with the Dew Immortal Garden was also of great benefit to the Dawn Cloud Bird niche and the Coiling Dragon Valley. After communicating with Sun Ningxiang, Gao Feng also decided to cooperate with Sun Ningxiang in his personal identity. He would provide the sea region to help the Dew Immortal Garden expand the aquatic plant phase business direction, while the Dew Immortal Garden would be responsible for the supply of all the plant spiritual ingredients at Gao Feng Shui's Fei breeding base. Sun Ningxiang was quite surprised to reach 3 cooperation agreements at once and expand the Dew Immortal Garden's business scope. He felt that Lin Yuan's thighs were simply too thick, as though there would always be endless benefits by following Lin Yuan's side. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of Wen Yu's investigation of the Aurora pollen, and found that the Dew Immortal Garden's Aurora pollen production accounted for 40% of the market share. Therefore, Lin Yuan said to Sun Ningxiang, the Aurora pollen in the Dew Immortal Garden should be maturing soon, right? Sun Ningxiang nodded and said, in another 2 to 3 months, it will be the cheapest time for Aurora petunias to produce pollen. Sun Ningxiang recalled the cooperation between Lin Yuan and the Blissful Sea Tribe. At that time, Sun Ningxiang had discovered that Lin Yuan was hostile to the Blissful Sea race. She had vaguely thought of the Aurora pollen, and had stopped the Dew Immortal Garden's production of Aurora pollen. Through the tens of thousands of small chambers of commerce controlled by the Dew Immortal Garden, they began to collect the Aurora pollen on a small scale in each of the 36 large cities. As a result, the amount of Aurora pollen on the market had become a little tight. This was why Sun Ningxiang would inject a large amount of Aurora pollen into the market whenever the price of Aurora pollen was about to soar. Once Sun Ningxiang stopped injecting Aurora pollen into the market, the Aurora pollen that had almost been sucked dry would immediately soar in price. Sun Ningxiang told Lin Yuan all of this without hesitation, which was also a small favor to him. Lin Yuan had originally wanted Sun Ningxiang to reduce the amount of Aurora pollen in the market in the next few months. Moreover, the Dew Immortal Garden would pay for the loss of Aurora pollen's sales. However, he had not expected Sun Ningxiang to make a decision in advance when she heard that he was negotiating with the Blissful Sea Tribe. Now, it seemed that Sun Ningxiang had become a chess piece to kill the Blissful Sea Tribe. Sun Ningxiang controlled 40% of the aurora pollen's market share. In addition to Sun Ningxiang's large absorption, half of the remaining 60% of the aurora pollen was concentrated in the hands of the Dew Immortal Garden. The remaining part was absorbed by Lin Yuan through the blind trade of the flower brocade pearls. As a result, the aurora pollen, which was a niche spirit material that did not circulate much in the market, was almost completely squeezed dry. At that time, the beautiful image of the aurora pollen would be exposed, and the price of the aurora pollen would skyrocket. What awaited the Elysian Sea tribe wouldn't be as simple as crushing a camel with straw. It was a tragedy of a camel being crushed into minced meat by a giant cauldron. Lin Yuan and Sun Ningxiang exchanged a tacit look, and the blissful sea tribe's fate was decided in that instant. Then, he looked at Long Tao and asked, "What do you think? Big Brother Dragon, I wonder if the Class 4-dimensional rifts controlled by the Coiling Dragon Valley can obtain the 8 extreme foreign insect Emperor Martial Divine Insect?" After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Long Tao did not immediately reply. Instead, he said to Lin Yuan, "Brother, I'll go and ask first." Soon after, Long Tao gave a call to the elder in charge of the dimensional rifts in the Coiling Dragon Valley. Since Lin Yuan had mentioned the Class 8 alien insect, the Imperial Armored Martial Divine Insect, he must have a plan for it. Therefore, Long Tao could not easily make a guarantee. After communicating with the seniors in charge of the dimensional rift in the Coiling Dragon Valley, Long Tao said to Lin Yuan, "Don't worry. The Coiling Dragon Valley has preserved the complete carcass of an Imperial Armored Martial God insect. There are also law origin crystals excavated from its body." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan hurriedly shook his head. The Imperial Armored Martial God insect's corpse could not pull a fey carriage. Although he needed the law origin crystals, the law origin crystals dug out of the Royal Armored Martial God insect's body were no different from those dug out of other Class 8-dimensional lifeforms' bodies. What Lin Yuan wanted were fresh Class 8 alien insect Emperor Armored Martial God insects in the Class 4 alien insect dimensional rift. Lin Yuan asked Long Tao seriously, "I wonder if I can obtain 12 living Imperial Armored Martial God insects from the Class 4 alien insect dimensional rift in the Coiling Dragon Valley." After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Long Tao's mouth gaped open. He did not understand what Lin Yuan wanted a living Imperial Armored Martial God insect for. The Emperor Armored Martial God insect could be said to be the most disliked Grade 8 exotic insect in the Coiling Dragon Valley. The Imperial Armored Martial God insect's combat power was simply too strong. Every time an Imperial Armored Martial God insect appeared, Pinnacle Emperor-class experts would be required to deal with it. Imperceptibly, a lot of the Coiling Dragon Valley's top experts' resources were wasted. Tomorrow, I'll start writing about the fight. Good night, everyone. End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.